Chapter 106. The letter of divorce. After the New Year festival passed, it was the time for the families to visit each other. As the Empress in the central palace, Chu Qingju naturally received many notices, but due to her pregnancy, she had just seen the members of the two Empress Dowager's paternal family, Tian Luoshi and others. Today, she needed to meet Ning Wangfei and Qing Wangfei. Ning Wangfei, Qing Wangfei, please come in. Wang Yang hurriedly walked out of the door into the rear hall, a wide smile on his face as he performed a greeting to Wei Qingyi and Luo Wenyao before bowing to lead the two people inside. Thanks Gonggong. Luo Wenyao smiled politely at Huang Yang. She knew that Huang Yang was someone that the Empress used often, so she treated him extremely courteously. Qing Wangfei is too polite, please. Wang Yang's attitude became even more humble as he steadily walked inside. Empress knew that both Wang Fei were coming and had woken early to wait. Wei Qingyi followed Huang Yang's words with some words expressing her gratefulness. When they reached the door to the room, she didn't speak anymore. Huang Yang announced, Empress, Ning Wangfei and Qing Wangfei have arrived. Quickly come in please. Wei Qingyi heard Chu Qingju's voice. And when the curtain in front of them was raised, a very familiar-looking palace maid coming out, bowing to them and ushered them into the room. This was the first time Wei Qingyi came to this place. At a glance, she saw that much care had been taken with the tasteful furnishings in the room, and there was nothing with corners, since they were worried that those things would harm the pregnant Chu Qingju. She looked at Chu Qingju who sat in front. Chu Qingju only had a simple hairstyle, a buyao inserted from the side. With her black hair, it expressed an indolent beauty. Greetings to Empress. Wei Qingyi and Luo Wenyao simultaneously made a bow, their movements full of deference. Us sisters-in-law don't have to be so polite with each other. Chu Qingju waved her hand and got the palace maids to bring a carved stool for each of them. Then she said, It's still snowing today, it must have been trouble to make you two visit Bengong. Nyang Nyang's words are taking good fortune from Chen Fu. Wei Qingyi added a smile as she said, Chen Fu should have come in before to give thanks, but these last few days were so busy so the visit was delayed. It's lucky that Nyang Nyang is kind and hasn't blamed Chen Fu. Desaw's words are too polite. Chu Qingju saw that Wei Qingyi was attired even more dignified than in the past and sighed inside. There were many women in Ning Wangfu. Wei Qingyi had a D son herself, and must have spent limitless amounts of attention. Ning Wangfu had been empty for so long, it's natural to spend time cleaning it up. Originally, Ben Gong should have sent servants to do so, but the emperor wished to be and summoned you back to Jing as soon as possible. Your family must have gone to great trouble. It's our entire family's good fortune that Emperor Mr. Wang Yi. Wei Qingyi smiled, replying, Wang Yi frequently mentioned the good of the emperor and said that even dying won't be enough to repay the kindness of the emperor. In the beginning, Wei Qingyi hadn't been as antagonistic as Qin Bailu, who had picked a fight whenever possible with Chu Qingju, but she acted as she was the eldest. Now, her words and actions were done to flatter to her, the Erdixie. Chu Qingju couldn't see any discontent in her actions and couldn't help but sigh again. Such a virtuous wife, and didn't abandon or give up on Ning Wang. Now that Ning Wang returned to Jing, he had taken quite a few women as Tongfang. That really wasn't a good thing to do. They're brothers, there's no need to speak of kindness. Chu Qingju waved her hand, and said to Luo Wenyao, Ben Gong heard you have some happy news, this really is a happy event. Luo Wenyao's face instantly blushed and she lowered her head as she responded, the Tai diagnosed it a few days earlier. Chen Fu had thought to wait a few days before telling you. Such a happy event, you can't conceal it from Ben Gong. Chu Qingju smiled, adding, Ben Gong let them prepare some things for pregnancy. When you leave, take it with you. If you are lacking in anything, send someone to tell Ben Gong, don't restrain yourself. Wei Qingyi listened to the conversation between the Empress and Qing Wangfei. She could detect the closeness that the Empress treated Qing Wangfei with. It was very different from the politeness that was offered to her. 1 year ago, no one would have thought that even Qing Wang would have a change of fortune. Actually, Ben Gong heard yesterday that people were saying that Rui Wang Junfei was ill. Have you too heard? 3 days ago, she had just attended the year-end banquet, and then got sick right after. If the news came out, who would be embarrassed? San Daimai has always been delicate. Yesterday night, it snowed, maybe she wasn't careful and got sick. Wei Qingyi spoke on the subject. She had an idea what the Empress meant and naturally would follow the direction, but San Daimai usually doesn't interact much with Chenfu and Si Daimai, so we also don't know. Chu Qingju nodded, looking rueful. That's so true, San Daimai's personality usually is proud. Even Ben Gong, she wasn't willing to interact much with. In a while, Ben Gong will get them to bestow some things down. It will be a token of Ben Gong's goodwill. The words appeared to be concerned about Qin Bailu, but the implication was accusing Qin Bailu was discourteous to the Empress. Wei Qingyi glanced around the room. There were many palace maids and Taijin standing around. If these words were leaked out, everyone would know of Qin Bailu's haughtiness. She dropped her gaze slightly so she would not look at the warm smile on Chu Qingju's face. The tone of her voice was assenting. Empress is kind-hearted and benevolent. Rui Jun Wangfei's actions are truly somewhat discourteous. Really kind-hearted and benevolent. Even when a Jun Wangfei was discourteous to her, she would still let bygones be bygones and bestow gifts down. This entire court, who wouldn't praise her for being virtuous? We are all one family, both you and I knew her temperament. Chu Qingju displayed a helpless look. Ben Gong will just hope that she will recover quickly now. Luo Wenyao used a handkerchief to cover her mouth as she agreed, Empress is right, the best thing would be that Sanso recovers. Wei Qingyi felt for a second that the closeness between the Empress and Qing Wangfei, perhaps it was because they were strangely similar in some aspects. Emperor. Ming-He saw the Emperor walk to the door of the rear hall and then turn to circle back to the front hall, and couldn't help cautiously asking, should Nukai go in to notify Empress? No need, He Hing waved his hand. He took down a book from the shelves and buried his head down. Ming-He took a peek. It was still that prescriptions worth 1,000 in gold that the Emperor had read for many days. Ever since the Empress had been found to be pregnant, the Emperor seemed to develop an interest in medical books. A long time later, just as Ming-He assumed that the Emperor would keep reading, an attendant of the Empress came to ask if the Emperor was going to go have a meal together. Then he saw the Emperor throw away the book and stand up. Looking at the medical book that the Emperor had heartlessly thrown to one side, it wasn't anything. In front of the Empress, it couldn't compare to one hair strand. In Rui Jun Wangfu, Qin Bailu furiously smashed everything that the palace had sent down before she felt her fury had been somewhat relieved. She hatefully looked at the ginseng, sneering, pretending to be so virtuous, like I don't have these things. She once hated Chu Yusu, and after Chu Yusu died, the one she hated most became Chu Qingju. The two sisters of the Chu family seemed to have been born to be at conflict with her, and disturb her days. Wang Fei, Wang Yi is already unhappy that you called in sick to not pay your respects to the Empress. Now, you smashed the Empress gifts. If Wang Yi knew, it won't be good. Ru Hua rushed the servants to clean up the room. After the attendants had all left, she urged, right now, even for yourself, you have Barrett. Barrett? Qin Bailu pointed in the direction of the main building. He only amuses himself every day and has never thought about me. Even if I tore down this room, he won't care. But if you keep going like this, you don't have to persuade me. In Wang Ye's eyes, I'm afraid that even a fingernail of the Empress is better than me. Maybe right now he's regretting that he hadn't married the Empress in the beginning rather than me. Qin Bailu was so infuriated that she didn't control her words. The Empress is so noble, so beautiful, I'm nothing. Ru Hua sighed helplessly. She thought about the rumors about Wang Fei outside. Jealous, not virtuous, arrogant and bad-mannered, disrespectful of the Empress. There were even people that said Wang Yi was going to divorce Wang Fei. If Wang Fei knew of those things, her sadness would be great. She just didn't understand what great irreconcilable enmity there was between Empress and Wang Fei, that Wang Fei would hate Empress so. It was clear that the two hadn't interacted much. Was it really because of the rumors about the decree of marriage? But the Empress and Emperor were very well together, and Wang Fei really didn't need to be jealous of the Empress. Outside the door, He Fu Er stood behind He Yuan, his legs trembling. He hadn't thought that Wang Fei would say such reckless things. If it passed into the Emperor's ears, wouldn't it cost Wang Yi his life? Thinking about the stories of the love between the imperial couple, He Fu Er swallowed. It would really cause his death. He was so unfortunate to have heard these words. Furtively looking at Wang Yi's expression, He Fu Er's legs grew even weaker. It had been a long time since he had seen Wang Yi look so terrible. Hearing the continuing complaints of the Wang Fei inside the room, He Fu Er finally couldn't stand and knelt down hard. He Yuan didn't look at He Fu Er, and with a grim face, went up to kick open the door. Gazing at Qin Bailu, who had abruptly froze, he ordered icily, He Fu Er, bring pen and paper. Wang Yi. Qin Bailu shrieked, I'm the Wang Feixiandi decreed to you, you can't divorce me. So you do know that your words would cause Ben Wang to divorce you, then why couldn't you control your mouth? He Yuan looked in disgust at Qin Bailu. Ben Wang might only be a Jun Wang now, but it doesn't mean having to tolerate a Wang Fei like you. Pen and paper. He Heng's voice grew even more harsh. Very quickly, someone brought pen and paper. Grinding the ink and laying down the paper, it seemed to have all been done in the blink of an eye in Qin Bailu's eyes. Wang Yi, Qin Bailu knelt down. She knew that He Yuan was serious this time and couldn't resist hugging his legs, crying, you can't treat me this way. Get her off. He Heng didn't even look at Qin Bailu. He held up the brush to dip in the ink and fluidly started writing. Wang Yi, Ru Hua knelt down at He Yuan's feet. Wang Fei wasn't doing it on purpose, please, forgive her this time, Wang Yi. The two minor Taijian saw that Wang Yi's face darkened even more and went up to drag and pin Ru Hua at one side. Ru Hua stared as Wang Yi wrote the entire letter of divorce in one go, as though he had finally vented all the emotions he had suppressed for a long time. She suddenly stopped pleading because she felt that, no matter how she and Wang Fei pleaded, Wang Yi wouldn't change his mind. Take it, He Yuan threw the still wet letter of divorce in front of Qin Bailu, coldly gazing down at her kneeling on the ground. The thing that Ben Wang regrets the most in this lifetime was marrying you. Qin Bailu's head buzzed as though she couldn't hear anything. She looked dazedly at the man that looked from high up down at her. She suddenly stood, pushing aside He Yuan, and was going to throw herself at the wall, before she was pulled back by He Fu Er at the side. If you want to die, go back to your Qin family to die. Don't dirty Ben Wang's place, He Yuan sneered. Someone come, pack up all of Qin Shi's things and send them back along with Qin Shi back to the Qin family. Yes, He Fu Er saw that the matter had progressed to this step and didn't dare provoke Wang Yi, so he started to order others to start packing. He Yuan didn't look again at Qin Bailu, he turned and walked away. The news that the daughter of the Qin family had been divorced by Rui Jun Wang spread through the entire Jing city by the afternoon. Almost everyone didn't believe that Rui Jun Wang would do it. Right now, Rui Jun Wang didn't have any real power. If he offended the Qin family, wouldn't his days become more difficult in the future? There were those that felt the daughter of the Qin family wasn't worthy of being a Wang Fei, were moved by Rui Jun Wang who wasn't willing to suffer, and sighed. On the second day, there was an imperial censor who reproached Rui Junwang's actions. The main idea was that the daughter of the Qin family had been declared by Xiandi. The fact that Rui Junwang had divorced his wife, the daughter of the Qin family, it was being unfilial to Xiandi. It ruined the conduct of the Long dynasty. Along the way, he praised the love that the emperor had for the empress. The empress is virtuous in her conduct, filial to her elders, attentive to Zhen. Zhen's love for her is only natural. The bootlicking had been misconstrued. He Heng's face was dark as he continued, the daughter of the Qin family dishonorably conducted herself, was of arrogant manner, and no virtues at all. Even in front of Zhen and Empress, she was arrogant and disrespectful. Rui Junwang is Zhen's brother, how can Zhen bear for him to be served by such a Wang Fei? The imperial censor choked. The terrible reputation of Qin Shi had already spread through Jing. It really was somewhat inappropriate for him to compare Qin Shi to the empress. He then knelt down and didn't say another word. Zhen thought, as a man, one should be filial to elders, esteem his wife, and love and protect his children. As a woman, one should have proper conduct, esteem her husband, be virtuous and intelligent. Only like this can husband and wife be harmonious. He Hing furrowed his eyebrows, adding, Zhen heard that the great scholar Lu Deren of Hongyuan Cabinet has a good daughter of both talent and good appearance. Why don't Zhen act as a matchmaker and let Lu Xiaojie and Zhen Sandy be engaged and will marry by the end of this year? Lu Jinghong paused and then forced out a smile as he knelt, replying, Wei Chen thanks the emperor for decreeing the marriage. The emperor was cutting off the Qin family's retreat. And also pulled his daughter in. But he could not refuse. He could only hope that Rui Junwang would treat his daughter well in the future. He would thank the heavens and earth if it didn't turn out like Qin Shi's circumstances. Chapter 107 Birth of a Son. Lu Yurong knelt as she listened to the Ministry of Rites official finish reciting the imperial decree before respectfully kowtowing along with her family. She watched as her father received the imperial decree from the official. Her expression wasn't joyful nor angry, and no one was able to see her thoughts regarding the marriage. After the rites official left, Lu Furen looked worriedly at the imperial decree. Lao Yi, what are we going to do? Rui Junwang's personality. Everyone knew what Rui Junwang's personality was like. Her daughter marrying that kind of a person, what good days would she have? Even more, the emperor wasn't close to Rui Junwang. Xu Gui Taifei was at odds with the two empress dowagers and had once even done an idiotic thing as to try to harm the empress. Their Lu family becoming connected to Rui Junwang, it was a great problem. Don't worry, since the emperor decreed the marriage, it shows that he trusts our Lu family, Lu Jinghong sighed, not knowing if he was comforting Lu Furen or himself. Furthermore, Rui Junwang has no real power right now. What does the emperor have to be suspicious of? Luo Furen knew that the matter was set in stone and there was no benefit in discussing it anymore. She was only feeling sorry for her daughter, marrying a powerless member of the imperial family. Mother doesn't have to be worried for me. Lu Yurong squeezed out a smile. Rui Junwang is still a Junwang. Also, he has no children in his fu. Daughter might be marrying over as the second wife, but the first one was divorced, so I'm not that different from the original. Furthermore, another person might not be a better match than Rui Junwang. Lu Jinghong's son, Lu Zhan, heard his Mimi's words and ground his teeth. Mimi, don't worry, Gij will be here. If Rui Junwang dares to bully you, Gij will go accuse him in front of the emperor to bring you back. It's not that scary. The smile on Lu Jingrong's face became brighter. She looked at the imperial decree in Lu Jinghong's hands. Life, it's just like that. Once the words came out, the Lu family became silent. No matter what, they felt they had fallen short for their daughter. When the peach flowers were in full bloom, He Heng, after the officials begged him 3 times, finally changed the era name to Jiayu, and informed the ancestors to use the first year of Jiayu to count the years. At the same time, the world started calling He Heng by Jiayu Emperor. In the 4th month of the first year of Jiayu, rain continued to come down for a few days, but what made He Heng feel restless wasn't the fine rain but Chu Qingju, who was close to childbirth. As the time grew closer, he became more and more nervous. A woman giving birth, it was like a foot in life and a foot in death. Thinking about the frightening event, he couldn't calm himself. It was now the end of the 4th month, but due to continuing rainfall for 3 days, the weather was slightly cold. He Heng finished reading the memorandum in his hands, and prepared to go to the rear palace, when he saw Ming He rush in, and make a sloppy bow. Emperor, Empress is giving birth. What? His expression changed slightly. He stood and took large steps, not even taking the time to change the robe he was wearing, which was stained with drops of ink. When they came to the rear hall of Tianqi Palace, the door to the delivery room had been closed. He Heng didn't know that his pale face had frightened all the palace attendants. He looked at the tightly secured door to the delivery room, demanding gravely, "When did the Empress start labor?" This morning, the Empress felt her belly hurt and let Nubi help her take a bath and then a meal. She walked for a while in the room before entering the delivery room. Jin Zhan bowed as she narrated, "Please, Emperor, don't worry. The midwife mama said that Juzi's fetus is in a good position and it will be a smooth delivery." He Heng's brain was a mess. He unconsciously raised a teacup for a drink. Why not tell Zhen earlier? Nyang said that Emperor had many state affairs and to let Nubi inform you when she entered the delivery room. Jin Zhan heard the anger in the Emperor's words and knelt down fearfully in front of He Heng. "Please, Emperor, don't be angry." Waving to let the palace maid who'd answered stand, he wasn't in a good mood, but still recognized that the palace maid was one of Chu Qingju's personal maids. So he didn't want to lash out at her, and continuously downed tea. When Empress Dowager Wei and Muhu Empress Dowager rushed over, they saw the black face of the Emperor and a silent room. There wasn't even much sound coming from the delivery room. Their hearts grew cold as they assumed that the Empress wasn't well, and asked urgently, "How's the Empress?" "Empress Dowager, just now a midwife mama came out to say the Empress was fine and had drank a bowl of ginseng porridge." Jin Zhan carefully answered, but His Highness would have to take some more time before being born. Childbirth is a hardship for women. Empress Dowager looked worriedly around the room and walked to sit down on a chair. She even forgot to invite Muhu Empress Dowager to sit down as well. Her brows creased as she said to Jin Zhan, "Tell the other servants to be careful. Anything the midwives want, you have to immediately send it in, understand?" "Nubi will remember." Jin Zhan turned to walk outside the hall and passed the Empress Dowager's decree to the other servants. Muhu Empress Dowager sat down next to Empress Dowager Wei. She had rarely seen the Empress Dowager Wei be so panicked and could only comfort, "Mimi, don't be too worried." These days, the Tai and the pregnancy mama all said that the position of the child is very good. Very quickly, you can hug your big grandson. Empress Dowager forced a smile. Her gaze still fixed on the door to the delivery room, not even noticing the bow He Heng gave her. He Heng saw the two Empress Dowagers arrive, but his mental state didn't calm down much. With a stomach full of tea, he couldn't help standing and started pacing in circles around the room. After a few minutes, sweat dotted his forehead. He didn't know whether it was from nervousness or the heat. The palace attendants in the room didn't dare to even breathe heavily. Watching as the Emperor becoming more and more jittery, they wished to push their heads down even further in hopes that the Emperor wouldn't see them. "Ah!" A shout of pain from Chu Qingju finally passed out of the room. He Heng rushed forward a few steps to the door of the delivery room. But after listening, he couldn't hear any more noises and couldn't resist asking, "Why hasn't there been news?" Ming He looked at the hourglass from the corner of his eye. It had just been half an hour. He might be a Taijian, but even he knew that it wasn't so easy for most women to give birth the first time. Why hasn't the Empress made a sound? He pointed at a palace maid. Go take a look. The Empress is giving birth, there's nothing for the other people to do. Empress Dowager Wei stood to walk next to He. She restrained the panic in her own heart. Look at the time. That year that Aijia gave birth to you, it took the entire night. Don't panic, no one has come out from inside. That means that the Empress is fine. He roughly wiped at the sweat on his forehead and paced around the room twice. If it wasn't for the stupid protocols of the imperial family and his worry that others would say things about Qing Ju in the future, he would have burst in already, and wouldn't be so frantic outside the door. The quiet surroundings made him feel it was harder to endure. He didn't know how much time passed when he seemed to have heard the midwife mama inside the room say something. He couldn't resist pressing himself against the door, wanting to see from the crack of the door. But to prevent the wind from entering the delivery room, all the curtains had been shut down. Other than a patch of black, he couldn't see anything else. An unknown amount of time later, He felt many hours had passed when in reality it had been only 1 hour. Just when he wasn't able to resist trying to push his way in, cries of an infant sounded suddenly from the delivery room. The wailing was so loud it seemed to burst through the roof. He exhaled greatly and realized that his entire body felt weak, and the tea in his belly was pushing uncomfortably. "Congratulations, Empress Dowagers, Emperor," one of the midwife mamas jubilantly opened the door and walked out, another midwife mama behind her carrying a swaddled infant. Kneeling down in front of the 3 noble personages, she announced, "Empress gave birth to a healthy imperial son. Reward, great reward." Empress Dowager Wei walked to the doorway and took over the infant from the midwife mama, smiling joyously at the chubby imperial son. "Pretty heavy, good, good, the brows and eyes are like the emperor, emperor come." Empress Dowager Wei looked in the direction that He was standing and then glanced around the room. Where was he? She looked at the half-open door, paused for a beat and then smiled as she shook her head. Together with Muhu Empress Dowager, they smiled as they started to look at their sturdy grandson. After giving birth, Chu Qing-ju felt as though she had used up all the strength she had in her life. She tiredly gave a yawn and drowsily watched as He pushed aside 2 of the midwife mamas who tried to block him and strode next to the bed. He was a sorry figure with his head full of sweat. She grew suspicious that the person who gave birth was He, not her. "Emperor, the blood is thick in the delivery room, you cannot enter." A midwife mama was still trying to stop him but was paralyzed by He's icy glare. "Zhen is in a good mood today, don't make Zhen angry." He uncaringly sat down at the bedside. After shouting away the midwife mama, He loving held Chu Qing-ju's hand. "Thanks for your trouble. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" "Just tired, want to sleep." Chu Qing-ju gave a yawn. "I've used all my energy." "Alright." He looked around the delivery room. He called for a palace maid to bring a clean blanket and wrapped Chu Qing-ju's hands and feet inside before bending down to lift her entirely with the blanket. "There's too much blood here. I'll take you back to the room to sleep." The entire room of people watched with gaping mouths as the emperor just carried the empress away. Then they recovered and hurried to follow them out. The midwife mama looked at the gory blanket left on the delivery bed and couldn't help but be moved. She had delivered from many noble families before, but she had never seen a husband be as attentive as the emperor. Who said that the imperial family had no love? The emperor treated the empress much better than those gentlemen of the noble families. Chu Qing-ju's room had already been prepared. After He put her down on the clean bed, he took out a handkerchief to wipe the sweat on her forehead for her. In a soft voice, he said, "Muhu had our child carried down to drink milk. Sleep now. Once you wake up, I'll get them to bring him here for you to see." "All right." Chu Qing-ju saw that there was still sweat on his forehead and smiled as she suggested, "Emperor should also change." Who knew when she finished speaking, He's expression changed. as though he was holding something back. "What is it?" Chu Qingju asked in puzzlement. "Jin drank too much tea just now," He Hing stood, quickly responding, "Jin will be back quickly." He headed in the direction of the bucket in the side room. Chu Qingju stilled and then laughed, her mood unspeakably good. Mu Jin and the others who were attending Chu Qingju in the room saw the Empress laugh. Even though they didn't know what the Emperor had just said to her, they followed in laughing. No matter what, as long as the Empress was well, they were well. After He Hing hurriedly solved his problem in the toilet and came back, he saw Chu Qingju had fallen asleep. Looking at her sleeping visage, he tucked in the blanket for her and couldn't help giving a warm smile. Empress Dowager Wei stood at the doorway. The foot that had been raised went back down. A beat later, she turned and retreated. Looking at the sky that had clearly at some unknown time, she serenely sighed, "This is good." Empress Dowager, the sun came out, Ding Mama beside her exclaimed in shock, "The sky cleared when Little Highness was born. This is very auspicious." Empress Dowager Wei peered out at the sun that had came out of the clouds, smiling and declaring, "Aijia's grandson will naturally have a good life." Ding Mama nodded. Nubi saw that the earlobes of His Highness are big and fleshy, the brow high and clear, the hair black and thick. It is all signs of good fortune. Empress Dowager Wei smiled, clearly very satisfied with what Ding Mama had said. The Empress gave birth to an imperial son. When Jiang Yongyu finished listening to what Ai Lu said, she gave a faint smile, "Then the clothing I made will be useful." It had been a very long time since the Emperor had ever come to her palace. Luckily, the Empress treated her well. For her, as long as the Empress remained unshakable in her position, she would have good days. Take for example, the rank she held. If it wasn't for the Empress, what qualifications did she have to be titled a Fei in the first place? Nubi heard that the Empress had been personally carried by the Emperor out of the delivery room. Ai Lu informed in a small voice, "Emperor treats Empress so well." "That is good." Jiang Yongyu finished the sewing on the small undergarment in her hands. Embroidered on it was a chubby infant hugging a gigantic red koi. The size was perfect for an infant a few months old to wear. "The Empress is well, then we will be well." The news that the Empress had given birth to the imperial eldest son very quickly made its way to the ears of the noble families. It caused a fuss in every family as they wrote congratulatory messages and prepared gifts. Many women were admiring. The Empress had been the only one favored by the Emperor and in one sweep, got a son. This was the good fortune that others could admire but didn't have. In Rui Jun Wangfu, He Yuan was tipsy. After hearing He Fu Er's report, he stilled and then ordered, "Send the gifts that Ben Wang prepared a few days ago to Tian Chi Palace." He Fu Er paused and hesitated for a beat before asking, "But Wang Yi, isn't it supposed to be a month before?" "Send it, don't be so chatty." He Yuan drank to the bottom of the wine cup. Ben Wang isn't lacking those things. He Fu Er helplessly complied. He sighed inside. If those things were sent into the palace, he wondered if the Emperor would misunderstand. If he thought that Wang Yi was trying to use the presents to get back into court, then it would be troublesome. Oh, he was becoming less able to predict what Wang Yi thought now. Chapter 108 Competing for the Empress' favor rather than the Emperor. His Highness the eldest imperial son was the only heir of the Emperor at present, so everyone knew that this eldest imperial son held special meaning. So when the third day washing ceremony came, the people who were allowed to attend all prepared auspicious gifts for the basin to express their regard for the eldest imperial son. Because the Empress was in her confinement period, the eldest imperial son was personally carried out by the two Empress Dowagers. Additionally, the Emperor sat from beginning to end. Everyone could see how much importance was placed on the infant by the three major personages of the palace. At the washing ceremony, some noblewomen of significant status were fortunate enough to get close to the eldest imperial son. When they left the palace, they kept on praising how well the eldest imperial son looked and how auspicious his features were. Those that didn't have enough status to be close to the empress dowagers also crowded around to praise, as though they would offend someone if they said it too late. More people in Jing started to fawn over the members of the Tian family, but to their surprise, the Tian family became more low-key. Even the families that the Shu daughters of the Tian family married into started to be low-key. When the actions of the Tian family passed into He Heng's ears, it improved his impression of the Tian family to be even better. After a short while, he would find a chance to bestow some things to the Tian family to imply that he was very satisfied with the Tian family's methods. The Jing city was always a prosperous place and there were naturally people in stalls on the sides of the street. So when one vendor saw a large stallion with a golden yellow cloth tied around it, he knew that it was a messenger with a decree and chatted about it with his customers. After the empress gave birth to the eldest imperial son, our Jing city has become busier as well. A dumpling vendor chuckled as he wrapped the dumplings in lotus leaves and handed them to the customer in front of him. We can try to partake in the cheer as well. Chu Wangzi had a difficult expression on his face as he stared at the cabbage-stuffed buns in his hand. He turned to look at the distant stallion, asking in befuddlement, "That road seems to be Zhongyi Gongfu." "Yup. The Duke of Zhongyi is a good official, and also the paternal family of the Empress. For the palace to bestow something to Zhongyi Gongfu, isn't that very normal?" The owner placed the prepared buns into the steamer basket, lowering his head to look at the fire in the stove, his face proud as he said, "The Empress once brought the stewed eggs that my Dai Jie sold. Right now, many noble personages go to taste my Dai Jie's stewed eggs. They all say that my Dai Jie's stewed eggs are full of flavor. If this guest is interested, then go buy some for a taste." He pointed at the stewed eggs stall opposite the street, his face full of pride. Chu Wangji twisted his head to look. As expected, many people were crowded around the stall buying eggs. He had seen some of them people, they were the stewards of some noble families. "Hey, isn't this young Master Chu?" A youth wearing the uniform of the Dongshan Academy sitting on a horse looked down at Chu Wangji with a scornful expression. "What lucky day is this that I'm so fortunate to see young master personally buying buns." The manservant that held the reins for the youth respectfully raised his hands, uttering, "This one greets young Master Chu." Chu Wangzi recognized that this youth was the Duke of Zhongyi's Shumi's son and instantly felt his face burn. He laughed dryly and raised his hands to greet, "Nice to see young Master Chin." "I can't receive young Master Chu's bow." The youth sat straight on the horse, smiling coldly as he declared, "Your Fu is such a noble family that it feels even the Empress is lower than them. Us poor little families cannot receive a bow." That year at the Empress' coming-of-age ceremony, that was how Liang Shi had mocked his mother. When his mother had returned home, she had cried over the matter to the point she became sick. If it wasn't that the emperor had decreed a marriage for Biao Jie half a month later, his mother would have remained ill for much longer. He had never met his Imu but heard from his mother say that his Imu had been very caring of her, and never bullied her because his mother was a Shu daughter. So even though it had been a few decades, his mother still sighed when she mentioned Imu. Thinking about the family of Chang de Gongfu, he felt slightly disgusted. At the very least, they were a ducal family but they acted worse than any common family. And this young Master Chu always carried himself arrogantly in the past at the Dongshan Academy. Every time they met, his nose was pointed at the heavens. Seeing Chu Wangji's lackluster state, he felt it was karma. Young Master Chen is joking, Chu Wangji couldn't even force out a smile. He even felt that the eyes of the surrounding vendors become strange as they looked at him. That made him, who was very attentive to his honor, almost not able to stay up. He made a messy bow, "This one still has other matters, and will go first. Young Master Chin, do whatever you want." Squeezing out of the crowd that had been spectating, he didn't even realize that the buns in his hand had been crushed flat by his hands. His steps grew faster and by the end he was sprinting. Only when no one was looking at him anymore did he find a store selling medicine as he panted. He brought a packet of medicine and then slowly made his way outside the city. After his father was especially pardoned, because it had been cold in the jail, his knees had worsened. Now, he could only lay in bed all day. Because his Jijia had died, his mother cried all day. His grandmother couldn't endure it and passed away not long ago. The funeral had been done by Urji, who gave the silver. Thinking about the mutually blaming father and mother, he wanted to turn and leave, and never return to the old village house. You don't have any right to blame me. That year, it was you that begged for me to marry to the fool. You couldn't teach your daughter properly and blame me for neglecting her. Why don't you think of what you did before? You evil woman. That year, I shouldn't have married you. If it wasn't for you, I would be the emperor's father-in-law. It's all because of you. Hearing the sounds of arguing inside the house, Chu Wangji showed a fed-up expression. In the end, he put the buns and the medicine at the doorway, then turned and left the noisy place. In the rear hall of Tianqi Palace, Chu Qingju finally came out of the confinement. She took a refreshing bath and changed into a beautiful silk dress before sitting at the bed to slowly wave a fan at the deeply asleep son. In the end, she couldn't resist kissing her son's mouth. Mu Jin saw the Empress' actions and she smiled. Walking next to the bed to look at the imperial son who fisted his hands in sleep, she informed in a small voice, "Nyang Nyang, Heng Fei Nyang Nyang has come to pay respects." Heng Fei has come. Chu Qingju moved her gaze away from her son. After ordering the nursemaid to keep a watch over the imperial son, she stood, ordering, "Let's go and see her." Jiang Yongyu had been drinking tea as she sat on a chair. Seeing Chu Qingju come out, she immediately put down the teacup and rose to give her a greeting. Heng Fei doesn't have to be so courteous, Chu Qingju smiled as she sat down at the front. "Please sit. Now that it's the 6th month, it's so hot. Why did you come over?" Pinky has nothing to do usually, and made some clothing for His Highness, just not sure if they fit. Jiang Yongyu took a stack of infant clothing from Ai Lu's hands, hope that Empress doesn't dislike Pinky's handiwork. Chu Qingju took over the clothing for a look. She sighed in admiration. Heng Fei's skills are so exquisite. What Ben Gong makes cannot compare to you. She indicated for Mu Jin to put the clothing away. It must have been great trouble for you to make such eye-straining things in this heat. Jiang Yongyu hurriedly responded, "Just some children's things, it doesn't take much effort." Saying something inappropriate here, Pinky has liked His Highness at first sight. Pinky is happy to make clothing for His Highness. Then in the future, the imperial son's clothing will have to trouble his shoe mother. Chu Qingju's face was happy, then Ben Gong will be much more idle. Jiang Yongyu's smile grew wider when she heard Chu Qingju's words. But she was very aware of her boundaries and knew that the emperor might come over at this time. She stood to bid farewell. Her intention was to follow the empress to live her life. If she met the emperor, then what would that be? Mu Jin saw Heng Fei off and then, with the other servants, inspected the clothing that Heng Fei brought one by one. She concluded, the materials are the best, and there's nothing wrong with them. And, Chu Qingju wasn't surprised. She knew that a person like Jiang Yongyu definitely wouldn't do something disadvantageous to others and to her. She randomly picked up one of the undergarments. The material used was fine satin, smooth and fine to the touch. Even if it was worn in the summer heat, it would feel cool. It was most likely that Heng Fei had used the best fabric she had to make these things. Touching the tiger embroidered on the undergarment, she smiled, remarking, "After His Highness takes a bath, put this on him." Mu Jin hesitated for a second before asking, "Nyang Nyang, why do you treat Heng Fei so well?" She has never harmed me, and expressed goodwill to me. I won't make it difficult for her. Chu Qingju looked at the pile of baby clothes. She didn't know how long it would take to make these clothes, that even the threads were cut clean. We're all women, I don't have to make life difficult for her. Mu Jin pondered and then understood what the Empress was thinking. Thinking about the usual conduct of Heng Fei, she asked in puzzlement. Heng Fei didn't try to take advantage of the opportunity to catch the attention of the Emperor. It's such a surprise. She knows what she wants. Chu Qingju put down the undergarment in her hand, smiling. She's a smart person, so that's why I dare to treat her so. When Heng walked into the inner room of the rear hall of Tianqi Palace, he saw Qingju fiddling with a pile of baby clothes. He walked in front of her and picked up a small shirt. The bat embroidered on here isn't bad. Heng Fei embroidered it. Chu Qingju looked at him. These clothes are all made well. Putting down the shirt in his hand, Heng turned to ask, Wang Er is still sleeping. Slept for 2 hours, he might wake soon. Chu Qingju pulled him over to the bed to look at her son. Pointing at the askew limbs of her son, she commented, like a pig. My son sleeps so aggressively. Heng gave a satisfied smile as he examined his son from head to toe. Along the way, he pulled up the silk blanket on his son's stomach, looking at his posture. Why don't we name him Tunner? A base name makes it easier to raise. When Chu Qingju heard the name, the first she thought about were the cute animals like dolphins and blowfish. She looked again at the round tummy that was pushing on the silk blanket. He seemed more like a piglet. You don't like it? Heng saw her face full of doubt and thought she wasn't happy. He pointed to his son's stomach. Look at that stomach, it's like a pig. So Tun meant pig. She laughed dryly. Tun is good, I like it. Maybe that he was disturbed by his unreliable parents. Tun pouted as he opened his eyes. Smelling the fragrance of his mother, he moaned a few times but didn't cry. Just as Heng went to lift him, a stream of infant urine landed on Heng's robes. The nursemaid on the side was so scared her face changed. But Chu Qingju roared with laughter as she pointed at Heng's dripping robes. Emperor is very lucky. An infant's urine is good stuff, it can ward off evil. This year, our Delong will have a good year of good weather. Tun groaned on his father's body as though he agreed with what his mother said. Heng helplessly rubbed his sons but once before handing the child to the nursemaid and let them leave for his son to nurse. Turning, he went to sit down next to Chu Qingju. Don't come over, you're damp. Chu Qingju held a hand out to block, but she was pinned down by Heng on the bed and rubbed against. It can't be just me alone that enjoys our infant son's urine. Qingju should also ward off spirits. Heng pinned the other under him, reaching to touch the waist that had recovered very well. They all say that after a woman gives birth, the waist becomes thick. How come Qingju's waist is still so soft? As he spoke, he placed a kiss on Chu Qingju's face. Chu Qingju reached to touch his ticklish spot, but her hand was caught in his. His other hand took advantage of the opportunity and sneaked inside her clothes. Standing outside, Mu Jin, Qian Chang Xian and the others heard the laughter of the two Zhuzi as they played around. They indicated for the people waiting outside to retreat to the outer doors and then dropped their heads to stare on the patterns of the floorboards. More than an hour later, the Emperor and Empress finally came out. Both had changed, and their moods were pretty good. Qian Chang Xian and the others quickly served the noon meal up. He looked the Emperor's eagerly attentive state as he personally served the Empress. He thought on the inside, the Durin of the court, would any of them ever think that the Emperor could act like this? Looking at the Empress that had no qualms about accepting the Emperor's service, he thought that it was hard to find a woman who could treat the Emperor like a normal person. The Empress was also rare in the world. As the sun set in the west, Yuping Palace was a flurry of activity. The Emperor and Empress had bestowed down many good things which caused the entire palace to be enveloped in good cheer. Jiang Yongyu looked at the valuable objects and smiled as she rewarded some to her servants. Then she let Ai Lu put everything away in her personal stores. Her anxious heart finally settled down. It looked like that the Empress really had accepted her. In the future, it meant that she would have a steady support. Didn't think that the Emperor would also bestow so much, Ai Lu said happily. It seems that the Emperor still has Juzi in his heart. Stupid girl, the Emperor is rewarding me for being tactful. The corner of Jiang Yongyu's lips went up. Don't think about those useless things, serve the evening meal now. Today, the Emperor had gone as far as to send down a decree to let her have her own small kitchen. That represented that she had really become the mistress of a palace. It didn't matter if it was fated to not compete for the favor of the Emperor, it was better to compete for the favor of the Empress. The days were idle and secure, so why not? Chapter 109 The Question of Trust. Chu Qingju's recent days were extremely carefree. Every day, she played with her son and ate delicious food. Her days were both easy and comfortable. Today, when He came to the rear hall, he saw his son wearing underwear as he struggled to wave his limbs on the bed, his neck toiling to raise itself up slightly before heavily falling down. It caused his mother to laugh out loud. What is this? He sat down at the edge of the bed, watching his son move his limbs like a turtle. The result was that he didn't move an inch. But he didn't throw a tantrum, only resolutely pushing his legs. Nothing, just letting him exercise his legs and neck. Chu Qingju proficiently flipped her son around, dealing a slap on his butt. Seeing him smile widely at her, she bent down to kiss his cheek. Taking a talcum powder box from Mu Jin's hands, she started to dust the powder to prevent rashes. The nursemaids can do this. He poked his son's arms that were like lotus roots. This brat does have a good temper. My son takes after me. Chu Qingju pulled out Tun Tun's arms to powder in his armpits. I can do these things. If I don't care for my one son, why did I give birth to him? He felt slightly upset for a bit. He looked with a complicated expression at the grinning fat infant on the bed and for a second, felt that his place in Qingju's heart wouldn't even compare to half a finger of his son. Tomorrow is Tun Tun's 100-day ceremony. Do you have anything to add to the schedule I gave to you earlier? It's pretty good. Chu Qingju carried Tun Tun into the arms of his nursemaid for her to bring him down to eat. After the nursemaid and others left, she commented, but isn't it too grand? It's just supposed to just be a 100-day ceremony. He's the imperial eldest son. His status is noble, there's nothing wrong with grand. He understood Chu Qingju's misgiving. He gathered the other into his arms. After our other children are born, we'll make it slightly less than their brother. All right, Chu Qingju smiled. She didn't seriously consider the vow-like words He said. She knew that his words were sincere now, but it didn't mean that she would believe the words would always be effective. The time for the 100-day ceremony of the eldest imperial son had been chosen by the imperial astronomers, based on the birthdate characters of the eldest imperial son and the celestial stars of the day. They had even examined the furnishings in the Wanhee Hall to guarantee which time was the best time of the day and the most advantageous for the eldest imperial son. Chu Qingju wasn't very knowledgeable about that kind of complicated matters, but from the preparation of Tun Tun's 100-day ceremony, it showed how much importance He placed on the ceremony. Personally putting her son into the 100-day clothes that the Empress Dowager had personally made for Tun Tun, she had heard that the cloth for this clothing had been sought by the Empress Dowager from many prosperous and healthy families. On closer look, it seemed that even the thread had come from more than 100 families. Touching the gourd peanuts and other designs embroidered on the 100-day clothes, Chu Qingju bent to lift up the still asleep Tun Tun. Go to Wanhee Hall. Wanhee Hall was the place used by the court only to hold large banquets, such as the coronation of an empress or the crown prince. To use such a place for holding a 100-day ceremony, it was enough to prove Tun Tun's position. In Wanhee Hall, the people who should have arrived came. Everyone looked towards the entrance as they waited for the Empress to appear with the eldest imperial son. But due to the fact that the Emperor and the two Empress Dowagers were present, their moves were very subtle. When it was almost at the auspicious time, the guests finally heard the sound of the Taijian making the announcement. Presenting the Empress, His Highness Imperial Son. The people rose and then knelt. What they then saw was a procession walk past on the red carpet, the pair of gold slippers walking at the front, embroidered with phoenixes in flight, were astoundingly magnificent. Rise! Everyone then stood and then saw the Empress carrying His Highness Imperial Son sit down on the right side of the Emperor. She was wearing a heavy phoenix robe, her eyes bright, she was unspeakably beautiful. Some people said after a woman gave birth, she then becomes a dried plum, sour and bland. But how the Empress looked, did she look as though she just gave birth? Some people started to sigh. No wonder the Emperor was so infatuated. This kind of woman, placed in any home, was the kind to draw a man's affections. The 100-day ceremony really wasn't a complicated event. Since the child was still so young, who would invent a large heap of rituals to torture the child? It was just the Emperor and Empress personally praying to the heavens for the child, and then personally putting on a long life lock and bracelet, to represent locking down the child's life expectancy and good fortune. Then it was the two Empress Dowagers putting on the tiger shoes and tiger hat for the child and touching the top of the child's head to represent the good wishes of the elders for the child. That was the end of it. After the process, Tun Tun was carried down by the nursemaid. The two Empress Dowagers also left with them, leaving He Heng and Chu Qing Ju to partake in the banquet with the other people. The names of the dishes on the banquet were all ones that were auspicious and good-sounding. The taste came second. But everyone still managed to decipher the significance placed by the Emperor on the Empress and the eldest imperial son from the banquet. No one dared to force the Emperor to drink, but they gave many compliments about the eldest imperial son to the Emperor and Empress. This caused He Heng to feel good and he couldn't resist drinking a few more cups. Chu Qing-ju saw his state and was worried that he would get drunk. She got him to drink some soup to suppress the drunkenness, but after seeing how happy He Heng was, she felt that the soup wasn't effective. Chen Di toasts the Emperor, and wishes for Emperor and Empress to grow old together, and His Highness Imperial Son to be healthy and fortunate. Just as the banquet was coming to an end, He Yuan raised a wine cup as he stood and said to He Heng, "Chen Di will drink first." He Heng looked at He Yuan who had his cup raised high up, and raised up his own wine cup as he slowly stood, giving a small smile as he replied, "Many thanks Sandy." The brothers gave each other a smile, and threw their heads back to drink all of the wine. Chu Qing-ju watched the two people and found that there wasn't much mirth on either of their faces. She looked at the others sitting down under her. There was a height of 9 stairs that separated her from the rest of the people, and the gap between their places was even further. As expected, He Heng was somewhat drunk after the banquet. Although his actions were no different from normal, but from his eyes and the tone of his voice, Chu Qing-ju detected that the other wasn't clear-minded. Returned to the rear hall, when He Heng pulled Chu Qing-ju onto the imperial carriage, he didn't forget to order Qian Chong Xan, make sure the nursemaid takes good care of the imperial son. The imperial carriage wasn't fast or slow but moved at a very steady pace. Chu Qing-ju could only feel a slight sway. She gazed at the person next to her as she raised 2 fingers. "Emperor, how many?" He Heng enclosed the 2 fingers she raised in his hand, smiling as he responded, "I'm not drunk, don't worry." The palm of the other's hand was slightly hot. Chu Qing-ju reached to touch his forehead, smiling helplessly as she said, "That's good, no drunk would say that he was drunk, just like those who committed many mistakes wouldn't admit that they were wrong. You don't believe me?" He Heng raised his head to look at her, his eyes bright. With a hint of poutiness and discontent, he added, "You always don't believe me." I believe you. Chu Qingju saw his pout and smiled, reassuring, you aren't drunk. I didn't say that I didn't believe you, right? Many times, you don't believe me. He Hing leaned his head on Chu Qingju's chest. I said that I would always treat you well, you didn't believe. I said that I will only have you from now. You also didn't believe. I said that in the future, I will only have you to have my children. You still doubt me. Why can't you believe me? The hand that Chu Qingju had been running down he hangs back slightly stilled. She looked down at the man complaining to her, smiling gently a second later, declared, Emperor, you think too much. I didn't think too much, I know very well. Both of He Heng's arms wrapped around her waist, tightly embracing her. We still have decades in the future. One day, you will believe Zhen's words. His voice was already somewhat indistinct. Chu Qingju knew he was going to enter sleep soon. Like she comforted Tun Tun, she gently patted his back, murmuring, there isn't trust that has no reason. If Emperor wants me to believe, then always treat me well. Only time will tell. The man in her arms mumbled something Chu Qingju didn't manage to catch. She only patted the man's back, her expression calm and serene. Outside the imperial carriage, Qian Chang Xian and Ming He didn't seem to have heard the noise from inside. The two didn't even exchange looks, but the expression on their faces became much more solemn. The 8th month was still hot. After He Heng was supported to the bed so he could sleep, Chu Qingju got the servants to move away the 2 ice basins in the room. Drunkenness and too much cold, it was a recipe for pain after waking up. Taking the handkerchief that Mu Jin handed over to personally wipe He Heng's face and hands, Chu Qingju said, let someone prepare the sobering tea. If the emperor wakes up, he needs to drink it. Yin Lut soundlessly went out. The others also detected that the empress seemed amiss, but they didn't know what had happened. But no one dared to needlessly ask, putting more care as they served. When He Heng woke, the sun was setting. He rubbed his aching head as he sat up in the bed. From a look, he recognized that it was Chu Qingju's bedroom. After thinking for a long while, he still couldn't recall how he had laid down on the bed. Emperor's awake. A blue and white teacup was held in front of him. Drink the sobering tea. He raised his head to look at Chu Qingju. The sun's rays pierced through the window to spill onto her body. Due to the backlighting, he couldn't make out the expression of her face, but he was strangely confident that the other was smiling now. Maybe it was that confidence that had him obediently take the teacup and drain down the entire cup of nasty-tasting sobering tea. After that, he rubbed his throat, asking, it's already this late. Yes, you drank a bit too much at the banquet. Chu Qingju took the empty cup from his hand. I got the kitchen to prepare some light dishes. Come up and eat some. He Hing dressed into his robes. He still felt this head was dizzy. He furrowed his brows as he looked around the room, discontentedly barking, where did all the servants go? How can they let you stay in the room alone? You don't count as a person. Chu Qingju glared at him, you were in a deep sleep so I made them all leave, rather than have them disturb you. He Hing became refreshed once Chu Qingju glared at him. Then he thought suspiciously, something wasn't right. Were Qingju's eyes, as they looked at him, slightly warmer? Was it that he still wasn't completely awake or did he wake up the wrong way? Chapter 110 Dance. The scorching summer gradually dissipated. The various zhuji in the palace took off their silk clothes, threw away the fans in their hands, their hairpins changed from jade to other types. There were some palace maids that thought to attract the emperor and put effort into their clothing and ornaments. But as they still had to adhere to the protocols of the palace, they had to put even more effort in. It was a pity that the emperor's entire heart was on the empress' body, and no one was able to attract the emperor's attentions. Kuei Yuan Palace had finished its renovation. The night luminous pearls encrusted in the room had been completely taken off because of the His Highness Imperial Sun. beautiful glass lanterns were put in their place. The whole endeavor had only been due to a careless remark of a certain official of the Ministry of Works who said that it was possible that night luminous pearls were harmful to the body. Everyone knew that night luminous pearls were rare objects. Many people didn't understand why the Empress didn't use them, so very quickly on the outside many people praised the Empress for being thrifty. Such a beautiful misunderstanding. He Hing felt that he should let it stay beautiful forever. Even though people knew that the Empress was living in Tianqi Palace, which was slightly inappropriate, but the Emperor had said before that the new renovation of Kuei Yuan Palace wasn't good for newborns. Since it had already passed the 6th month, the good moving day was in the 2nd month of the next year. So in the end, the day that the Empress was to move to Kuei Yuan Palace was finalized on the 22nd of the 2nd year of Jiaoyu. Since the Emperor himself had already made the decision, there wasn't anyone at court blind enough to argue. Either way, with how strong the love was between Emperor and Empress, they, as outsiders, would stir dislike from the Emperor if they meddled. Furthermore, the Empress Dowagers didn't object, so why would they care? Chu Qingju occasionally would hear some of the rumors from the outside about her. Most of them were about her goddess-like beauty, her generosity, frugalness, and love for the people. Even though she felt that the Empress in the rumors didn't have much of a relation to her, but she knew inside that behind the rumors was He Heng's manipulations in the shadows. She reaped the benefits of He Heng using such tactics to protect her, so she didn't bear to tear down his stage. Occasionally she would use the position of the Empress to reward some of the kind and famous women in the Dalong dynasty. In the 9th month, after her birthday, she even personally rewarded a twice-married woman that saved a few children in a great fire. This woman, because of her second marriage, had been the subject of gossip in the village. But after the handkerchief that Chu Qingju had embroidered with, as brave as any man, she became the most respected matron in the entire county. No one looked down at her again because she had married twice, but became courteous. Chu Qingju never once thought that she had the power to promote change in history, but she wanted to do the things she could. In this world, if a man had a wife and many concubines, he would be praised as romantic, but why couldn't they tolerate a remarried woman? Certain scholars in Dalong dynasty though it was a duty of a woman to not marry twice, but the act of the woman who saved others couldn't be erased. Therefore, not many people jumped out to criticize the Empress' actions as being inappropriate. Even more, what the Empress praised was the woman's act of saving others, not praising her for remarrying. It wouldn't be appropriate for them to object. So this matter calmly passed away. Chu Qingju still acted as the mistress of the Hogong. When bored, she would listen to songs, listen to interesting matters outside of court before picking one or two to praise and reward some things down, then play with her son. Her days were very comfortable. After the Empress Dowagers and Chu Qingju's birthdays had passed, it was He Heng's birthday celebration. Because it was the first birthday after He Heng ascended the throne, even if they wished for the birthday celebration to not be grand, it would still become grand. Disregarding the noble families and officials of the country of Dalong itself, even those small subordinate countries on the borders would send envoys to congratulate the new emperor and attend his birthday celebration to express their respect and sincerity to the new emperor. Since Dalong dynasty was a strong country, there were many small subordinate countries that relied on Dalong. Chu Qingju looked through the tribute that those subordinate countries had sent up to Dalong over the years and instantly felt that Dalong was very awesome. Something that Chu Qingju found interesting was a small subordinate country called Jing. The present ruler of this country was a female one, and the ones coming to give the tribute this time to Dalong were her son and daughter. The reason that she sent both was that she wanted He Heng to decree one of them as the successor to the throne and through her attitude, expressed the loyalty of the country of Jing to Dalong. This feeling of the world coming to rest at Dalong's feet really made people feel refreshed all over. He Heng returned to the rear hall and saw that Chu Qingju was still looking at the information of the subordinate countries. When he took a closer look, he found that what she was reading explained some of the customs of the country of Jing. Then he asked, "What's so special about this Jing?" Chu Qingju fanned the papers in her hands. "I heard that Jing's Hogwa, princess is amazingly beautiful. Coming to Dalong this time, I wonder how many men would she enchant." "That's just the Jing people's own opinion." He Heng's tone was slightly disapproving. "Jing's territory is high up, so the majority of people's skin are dark-colored, so how beautiful could they be? Compared to our Dalong's females, they must be severely lacking. It's all just unfounded rumors to deceive ignorant people." The corners of Chu Qingju's lips jerked. It did seem like that the males of the Dalong dynasty did prefer women with white and soft skin. So He Heng's attitude, it really was normal. "What, you don't like this princess?" He Heng assumed that Chu Qingju was worried that he would have an interest in that Jing country princess and assured, "Don't worry, I have no interest in other women. Even more, this Hogwo princess wants to be empress, not our Dalong's Feipin." Chu Qingju placed the information on Jing country to a side and snorted, "Emperor, you're thinking too much." I was thinking too much, don't be angry." He Heng laughed lightly, holding up another stack of information. "You don't need to waste too much effort on these subordinate countries. Like this Duohan. 100 years ago, they frequently robbed and killed our people at the northern border of Dalong. In the end, they were soundly defeated by our Dalong. They got scared and then obediently gave their allegiance. If they were not obedient, they would get beaten up." Chu Qingju finally realized the attitude Dalong held towards those subordinate countries. The main idea was, "Be docile for me, listen to what I say, or I'll beat you up, down into the ground." "I was just reading through because I was bored." Chu Qingju massaged the back of her neck. "Our Dalong is so strong." He Heng smiled. "Falling behind means getting beaten up. That was the lesson that the previous dynasty taught us." He Heng reached out a hand to gently massage her neck. "However, has Qingju forgotten something that was promised to me?" "What?" Chu Qingju raised an eyebrow. She thought that her recent memory was pretty good and hadn't diminished due to her pregnancy. "For example, you once said you would dance for me." He Heng reached to grasp that soft waist. "I often wonder what Qingju's dancing is like." "I said that it depended on your performance." Chu Qingju smiled. Seeing He Heng's let-down expression, she smiled, conceding, "All right, looking at your good behavior recently, I'll let you see 3 days later. Wait for Ben Gong." He Heng saw that her eyes were suddenly lit up, and his disappointment all dissolved into a smile. "Thanks, Empress, for her grace." "What is this?" In the evening, Mu Jin saw a palace maid come out with a stack of paper that had ink on it, and became worried that this palace maid was taking out something she shouldn't have. She reached to take the papers and casually scanned. Seeing something about the Hogwo princess was beautiful and skilled in dancing, her brow furrowed as she asked, "Who let you clean this up?" Mu Jin Jijie, "It was Nyang Nyang who let Nubi clean up," the palace maid submissively answered. Mu Jin saw that the palace maid was quite young and seemed quick-witted, so she ripped what was in her hands and rolled it into a ball. "Go and burn it, it's nothing useful." No matter what it was, as long as it was something that came from Nyang Nyang's place, she always likes for the others to clean it completely. Yes, the young palace maid took over the paper ball and carefully held it in her hands as she left, clearly in a rush to burn it. Still too inexperienced. Mu Jin sighed. Clever, yes. But her actions were still immature. She still needed more training. Entering the room, she saw the Empress was practicing a back bend. She was accustomed to it and went forward, asking, "Nyang Nyang, Nubi and Jin Zhan has already picked the fabrics. Jin Zhan's skills are better than Nubi, so the clothes will be made by her and Yuzhan. Nubi has also prepared what you asked for. Do you want to see? I'm confident in your abilities, there's no need to make trouble." Chu Qingju smiled as she replied, you just have to finish decorating the Western Hall before tomorrow night according to what I ordered. Newbie knows, Mu-jin didn't ask why the Empress was preparing those things. As a servant, she was very clear to her position, and knew what to say or not say. Chu Qingju returned to standing but didn't immediately sit down, only wiping the sweat from her eyes as she ordered, "Send some water in, I want to bathe." After Mu-jin retreated, Chu Qingju walked to the window to look at the parasol tree. She sighed. It had been almost 2 months since that time that He-heng was drunk. Every time she thought about He-heng's discontent and sorrowful expression, she felt that she might have been too ruthless with He-heng. But she always was mind over heart. To lose her mind when interacting with a man, that wasn't her style. What she could do was when the other treated her well, she would treat the other well. If the other had no feelings, then she wouldn't offer herself. If a person disappeared from the world, the sun would still rise. The nights in autumn were cold, but the moon was exceptionally bright. When He-heng finished attending to state matters, he rushed to the rear palace. He still remembered that dance that Chu Qingju had promised him. The result was that when he reached the rear hall, he found it empty, even Chu Qingju's shadow wasn't seen. "Emperor, Empress invites you to the Western Hall of Kuei Yuan Palace." Yin Lu was holding a lantern as she bowed at the doorway. "Please." He-heng didn't get irritated and was in a good mood as he followed Yin Lu. The rear hall wasn't far from Kuei Yuan Palace. But what He-heng found unexpected was how exceptionally dark the road was. The only brightness came from the lantern that Yin Lu held. On the lantern was drawn a woman wearing red, flying in the air. When he reached Kuei Yuan Palace, He-heng saw the tightly closed Western Hall was lit up brightly. At the door, there were 2 palace maids standing guard. Other than that, he couldn't see anything else. Qian Chang Axian and the others that had followed after He-heng were curious. What was the Empress up to that was so mysterious? "Emperor, please." Yin Lu smiled as she ushered the other towards the Western Hall and then turned back to look at Qian Chang Axian and the others waiting behind. "You all can wait outside. Other than Jin's decree, you are not allowed to enter." He-heng waved his hands, indicating he didn't need Yin Lu to lead him, and headed straight for the doors to the hall. Seeing the 2 palace maids at the door bow to him before leaving, the curiosity in his heart grew. What kind of dance would the Empress perform for him? He took a breath and reached to slowly push open the doors to the hall. He only saw that the silk curtains flying in the steam and heat as though it was a paradise. But that wasn't the most attractive thing. The one thing that caught his attention was, on the waters with countless lotus lamps floating in the white jade pool, there was a large flower stage, and in the center of the flower stage, there laid a beauty dressed in an indigo and red dress. Chapter 111. Flying gracefully, the lights in the Western Hall suddenly extinguished. Only the night luminous pearls on the stage and the flower lanterns floating on the water provided illumination, as though in the world, there only existed the woman on the stage. The music of the ancient qin quietly started, and the person on the flower stage moved. The red sleeves seemed to cut through the dark night, flying in the air like ripples in the water. The flower stage slightly trembled and the red-clad woman moved with it, suddenly starting to spin as though what was under her feet wasn't the unsteady flower stage floating on the water, but the solid ground. The bells at her ankles rang out in the darkness, striking deep into the soul, again and again striking He-heng's appreciation. Chu Qingju was dressed entirely in red. It was a pure vermilion. No jewelry, no jade. Other than a string of bells on her ankles, she had no adornments on her body. The night wind blew in through the open windows, lifting up the silk curtains in the room, and also the vermilion dress. The flexible waist suddenly stopped, and then a back flip. The red sleeves drawing out a circle in the air. In the blink of an eye, the person was reclining on the flower stage. Flower petals slowly floated down, falling on the steaming water, and creating charm for the amazing dance. At some unknown time, a pipa appeared in Chu Qingju's hands. She slowly stood, her right foot slowly curling, her fingertip gently flicking, her neck slightly raised, like a goddess taking a flight to the heavens. Even though there was a moving smile on her face, but it stirred fear in the onlooker that she would suddenly leave. He couldn't resist walking forward, and saw Chu Qingju's eyes swirl as she started to dance and play the pipa at the same time. After the song ended, a red silk rope suddenly fell down from the top. Chu Qingju wrapped her hand around the rope and with a push of her feet, she managed to fly off the flower stage in the midst of a rain of flower petals. Qingju. He pushed aside layers of silk. When he saw the faintly smiling person reclining on the bed, his heart jumped. He muttered, "The ancients talked about one dancing the feathered coat and rainbow skirt with a breeze in her skirts. It's only today that I know what it meant." Chu Qingju turned around, changing to lean on the bed, her eyes bewitching as she asked, "Is Emperor satisfied with my dance?" "A dance that overturns the state." He walked next to the bed, reaching to pull out the jade hairpin in her hair, his voice husky as he replied, "To have such a woman, in this life what else do I need to ask for?" The wind started, the sleeves slightly swayed as though it stirred Hang's heart. He couldn't resist gathering Chu Qingju in his embrace. Such scenery, such beauty, his heart was tangled like hair, and there was nothing else that could enter his eyes. The servants all waited outside Kuei Yuan Palace. No one knew what had happened inside Kuei Yuan Palace. Some of the attendants that had cooperated with Chu Qingju in her dance had all left when Chu Qingju stopped dancing. The moment the doors to the Western Hall closed, it also closed on the romantic night of the Emperor and Empress. The moonlight was still there, the people were still the same, but to Mu Jin and the group of people waiting outside, if the Emperor hadn't appeared out of the Western Hall now, then it meant that before the sunrise tomorrow morning, the Emperor wouldn't come out. Mu Jin turned to look at the Western Hall. Not just Emperor, even her, a woman, when she saw the Empress in that vermilion costume had been dumbstruck. Perhaps there really were women in this world that might be the most beautiful in the world, but they didn't have the ability to entice others, like Empress did. When Chu Qingju woke up, the sky was turning pale. She looked at the man who was holding her, and reached out to brush aside the strands of hair in front of the face. Two pairs of eyes met, and she found the other was already awake, his eyes incomparably warm. Awake? He reached to brush through Chu Qingju's hair, smiling as he asked, "Call for the servants to come in." Chu Qingju yawned and looked outside the window through the layers of silk. She lazily leaned her head on Hang's chest. "Don't want to get up." A beauty in the arms, "I don't want to get up either." Hang's hand gently slid across Chu Qingju's back, and unwillingly and discontentedly sighed, "I finally understand the reason behind from now, the Emperor will not have morning court. Emperor is willing to be the incapable ruler, but I'm not willing to be that calamitous demoness." Chu Qingju pinched at his waist, and got up to throw the red outer garment casually over her body. She flung her head of soft and smooth hair, revealing her pale legs as she walked through layers of silk to enter the hot spring, the red robe spreading out in the water. He dressed, and when he walked next to the water, he saw her swim around in a circle with seductive poses. He turned to grab a large and clean towel, squatting down and reaching with his hands, urging, "Come up, it'll be cold when you get out of the water." Chu Qingju swam in front of him. She looked at the hands he had reached out with, and suddenly pulled, dragging Hang into the water. Ming He and the others that had been waiting outside the hall heard the sound of something landing in the water inside, and then the laughter of the Emperor and Empress. They could only quietly bend down even more and bury their heads even lower. The end result was that Hang managed to arrive at court almost 10 minutes late. But it was such a short gap that no one thought more about it. The only thing that the officials couldn't understand was why the Emperor was in an exceptionally good mood. Even his voice as he decreed to investigate corrupt officials was softer than usual. The officials thought in puzzlement, was the emperor expectant of the upcoming birthday? At the end of the 9th month, the envoys of the minor countries started to arrive in Jing City. They were placed to live in the visitor palace that was set aside for guests. Even though it was a palace, it wasn't connected with the imperial palace, but was constructed on a certain wide and clean street. That same street was also home to many noble families. After the envoys arrived, they quickly sent their cards to Hihing. However, it was the Ministry of Rights officials that saw them. If they wanted to see Hihing in person, they had to wait for the birthday celebration. When it was time for the country of Jing to arrive, it caused a portion of the people to gather on the side of the street. They held curiosity for the carriages from another land. Even more, they had heard that a beautiful princess was sitting in the grand carriage. Such alluring gossip, even if they didn't see the person, it was enough to see the carriage. The envoy from Jing was settled down in the Jiaoxiang compound of the visitor's palace. After moving in, the imperial son and princess of Jing, and the envoys from other countries mutually exchanged greetings, sought out news about the city of Jing before they returned to their compound. Dai Rong looked at the teacup in her hand, her voice slightly awed. "Delong is so prosperous and glorious, even a teacup like this would be something in our Jing that everyone would fight over. But here in Delong, it's just something common." A smile formed on her beautiful face. "I heard from others that said that the new emperor is extremely handsome and is a very capable ruler. Also, he doesn't have many women in the Hogong. Such a rare kind of emperor. But I heard that the Empress of Delong is as beautiful as a goddess, kind-hearted and in love with His Majesty the Emperor." Tu Air seemed to have seen through his Mimi's mind, indifferently playing with a bracelet of agate. "It makes one admire. There is no man in this world that doesn't want something new." Dai Rong smiled carelessly, her expression extremely confident. "The past emperors of Delong, they all had many beauties in their Hogong." Tu Air shrugged, and spreading out his hands, he declared, "All right, I won't stop you from whatever you will do. If you make His Majesty the Emperor mad, and lose the right to succession, it would be a great event for me. My good Gidge, there isn't a man that would neglect a beautiful woman." Dai Rong's index finger slid across her red lips. "Just wait and see. I will become Jing's greatest empress. Since you insist on doing so." Tu Air put down the agate bracelet in his hands and spread them, smiling. "I hope you succeed." When he finished, he smiled and walked out of the room, turning to return to his own rooms. "Princess, what does the imperial son mean?" A female attendant behind Dai Ron frowned as she asked, "Would the imperial son try to set you up?" "Don't worry, Gidge isn't so stupid as to fight with me in front of His Majesty the Emperor. That wouldn't be of benefit to Jing's reputation." Dai Rong set down the cup in her hand. "Even more, Mother favors me more. More people are willing to listen to me. If he wanted to scheme against me, he doesn't have many helpers." Thinking about the empress that Tu Air mentioned, she snorted. Most of the women of Delong were in the mold of being virtuous. For a time, a man would find it interesting. If they had to always face such a kind of women all the time, it would be strange if they didn't get sick of it. If she could use her beauty to obtain the favor of His Majesty the Emperor, she would get the throne, and also get more benefits for Jing from Delong. Why shouldn't she do it? So what if there was an empress? Would the emperor remain pure as jade for her? In the rear hall of Tian Qi Palace, Chu Qingju was teasing Tun Tun to reach and grab the small drum in her hand. Seeing his head sway about with the drum, and reaching out to grab, she smiled as she pushed the small drum into his hand. Then she saw Tuo clumsily shove the drum into his mouth. Chu Qingju didn't stop him. Seeing his toothless mouth smear the drum with saliva, she took a handkerchief to wipe his face. Then she reached out to rub his back. Finding that his temperature was normal, she lifted Tuo up. "Tun Tun, say ma." "Ah, ma. Ah, ah." Seeing Tun Tun smile ignorantly at her, Chu Qingju couldn't resist kissing his face repeatedly. Tun Tun, tomorrow is your father's birthday, say Ma. It's my birthday, why should he first call you? When He Hing came in, he heard the words and helplessly walked in front of his son. He reached out to poke his son's face. Seeing him duck into his muhu's arms with a dark face, his eyebrow raised as he remarked, this brat knows how to hide. Don't poke, Chu Qingju slapped aside his hand, rough hands and feet, it'll harm his skin. He's not tofu and can't be touched, He Hing resentfully took his hand back. Seeing Tun Tun reach with his plump hands to lie on Chu Qingju's body, he asked, why do I feel that he is much closer to you? He lived in my belly for more than 9 months, Chu Qingju shot him a glare, if you can give birth to a child, he will be close to you. He Hing rubbed his nose. He felt that he couldn't challenge a woman's power and status in this field, and only responded, it's good that the child is close to you. It means that this child will be a filial one. Finishing, he took the advantage to rub his son's butt. Chu Qingju handed the child to the nursemaid and sat down on the chair with He Hing. She knew that many envoys from subordinate countries were arriving tomorrow and asked, have all the envoys arrived? All here. Even the one from Duhan managed to arrive 4 days earlier, He Hing thought, and then added, the imperial son and princess from Jing also came. I heard that they caused quite a fuss. Chu Qingju raised an eyebrow, arguing, a beauty's entrance should be grand. He Hing smiled. Then he objected, as a subordinate country, they should act like one. What host would like a loud guest that overwhelms them? Chu Qingju listened to his tone of voice and detected that the envoy from Jing had done something to make him unhappy, so she asked, what did they do? I heard they created a furor when they entered Jing city and then came in a 12-horse carriage. He Hing's brow furrowed, Xiandi hasn't yet passed away for 3 years yet, but they are already dancing and singing, they have no sense of propriety. Chu Qingju finally understood. Even though it was already past the mourning period, but it was very likely that when the envoys of the subordinate countries arrived and expressed their allegiance, they certainly expressed their grief at the passing of Xiandi. So the country of Jing's behavior was lacking to He Hing. A 12-horse carriage. When He Hing was still a Wang Yi, he could only use an 8-horse carriage. Were the imperial son and princess of the country of Jing even nobler than a Wang Yi of Delong? Didn't the information on the country of Jing say that the Huguo princess was beautiful, good at dancing and singing and peerlessly intelligent? Why was it that her actions seemed to rub He Hing the wrong way? Or was it that this was the tactic that the Huguo princess was using to attract the new emperor's attention? Such a pity. Regardless of her real intentions, her ploys were being performed in front of blind people. It also made He Hing discontent. It really made people feel sympathy. The feathers coat and rainbow skirt dance originated in the Tang dynasty when Tang Xian Emperor dreamed of going to the palace of heaven and saw the goddesses dance. He took inspiration from that to compose a song and dance suitable to perform in the palace. Later, Yang Guifei was one of those who did the performance. Additionally, the phrase comes from the Song of Everlasting Regret. Chapter 112. The day of the emperor's birthday, all the attendants of the palace made themselves 120% alert. No one dared to slip up. If they managed to mess up in front of their superior, even if they didn't die, they would be torn off half a body of skin. The palace maids and Taijian under the supervision of the Department of Household Affairs perfectly arranged everything from clothing to food. Even the Wanhe Hall itself was washed again and again. The white jade steps outside were wiped so clean that even a speck of dirt couldn't be found. Today's weather is really good, a blue-clad Taijian raised his head to look at the sun hanging in the sky, and in a lower voice, said to his partner beside him, "Hey, have you heard yet how beautiful the princess of Jing is? She's planning to present a dance at the banquet. There's nothing strange, his partner used the cloth in his hand to carefully wipe the pillars of the corridor. Just a princess from a minor country. Is she worth you being so curious? I think your brains are made out of a wood. A normal princess, why would she present a dance out of the blue in front of the emperor? The blue-robed Taijian proclaimed hatefully, that one's thoughts aren't simple. Isn't there still the empress? His partner bent to wash clean the rag in a basin. Just a pellet-sized country's princess, there's nothing to gape about. No matter how good a woman is, they can't compare to a new, who is speaking nonsense. A steward Taijian wearing deep blue rippled robes walked over with a group of young Taijian behind him. He pointed expressionlessly at the blue-robed Taijian, drag him down, drag him down. Presuming to comment on his juzi, sparing his life will only make other people's lives harder. Before the blue-robed Taijian could beg for mercy, his mouth was stuffed and he was dragged down. His partner was already collapsed on the ground in fear. You at least know your bounds, the Taijian steward rubbed his hairless chin. He waved his hand, continue working. If I hear something I shouldn't hear again, the one just now is the lesson. By that time, don't blame me for not warning everyone. What's going on here? Jean Jean, wearing a water blue palace dress, saw a Taijian being dragged from far away. When she neared, she found that the Taijian and palace maids present all had abnormal expressions on their faces. She asked, what did that Taijian do just now? Good day, Jean Jean Gunyang. When the steward Taijian saw Jean Jean, a smile instantly appeared on his face. He went forward to bow to Jean Jean. Does Jean Jean Gunyang have something to order us to do? Jean Jean saw the steward Taijian wasn't willing to speak on the Taijian that had been dragged away and didn't persist. She opened, the empress said, everyone has worked hard. After a little while, everyone can go to the kitchen to receive a bowl of lily porridge to warm up. The weather of the 10th month is cold at night. Thanks to the empress for her grace, the steward Taijian instantly gave a grateful expression. He made a full bow in the direction of the back end of Tianqi Palace and then said a few more compliments regarding the empress before stopping. Jean Jean didn't stay for long. After some polite chit-chat with the steward Taijian, she left. The steward Taijian watched her back and sighed. Right now, the empress's side was splendid. If he could join in on the empress side, he wouldn't still be a steward. It was a pity that the people surrounding the empress were like a metal barrel. It was hard for an average person to even show their face in front of the empress. Others said that the empress was kind and generous, but based on his experience of serving more than 20 years in the Hogong, the empress wasn't a simple person. Earlier, when Chang de Gong Fu had fallen, her reputation hadn't been affected but became even better. That wasn't something that any woman could do. Then there was the earlier matter of Han Liangdi's accidental death. Everyone knew that it was caused by the cooperation of Xu Gui Taifei and Ping Kairen. The empress was only washed of suspicion due to the heavy defenses of Tianqi Palace. But he felt that the matter wasn't that simple. Many people in the Hogong knew that the two empress dowagers and Xu Gui Taifei were at odds. After the new emperor ascended the throne, Xu Gui Taifei's people had been cleaned out. It wouldn't have been easy to cooperate with Ping Kairen. Then, who was the person that made it easy for them to act together? The steward Taijian's shoulders trembled. He didn't dare to think further. As a tiny steward, he should obediently fulfill his duties. He already lost his manhood, he didn't want to lose his life as well. Nyang Nyang, do you think that this is appropriate? Yuzan and Yinlu brought out the mirrors and let Chu Qingju gaze at her front and back. They asked cautiously, is there any place lacking? Chu Qingju's index finger lightly swiped over the red flower on her forehead. She smiled, complimenting, very beautiful, Yuzan's skills are getting even better. Taking out a phoenix in flight buyao from her jewelry box to insert into her hair, Chu Qingju slowly stood. The hour is late, let's go to the main hall to meet the emperor. After He Hing changed his robes, he heard that the servants report that the empress had arrived. He didn't hesitate and let the servants welcome the empress in, himself standing in front of the large mirror for a crowd of palace maids and Taijian to attire him. Greetings to Emperor. Chu Qingju walked behind He Hing and examined him from top to bottom, handsome, with a natural character that all will sigh over. The ancients talked of a pear blossom that suppresses the apple blossoms. The emperor is worthy of this line. The palace attendants in the room, upon hearing the empress tease the emperor, jumped in fright but didn't dare to show any signs on their face. With a pearl on the side, I appear like dirt. He Hing wasn't angry hearing the words. Instead, he smiled and turned to look at Chu Qingju dressed in a vermilion floor-length phoenix robe with wide sleeves. With Qingju here, everything else in the world is nothing. The palace attendants quietly lowered their heads. So the emperor and empress were playing a game of you compliment me, I compliment you. As servants, they will act as though they were deaf. The lights of Wanhe Hall shone brightly. Those who were able to attend and sit in the hall, scornful all of them were full of joy, as though it was their birthday. He Yuan sat beneath He Ming, lazily swirling and concentrating on a finely crafted porcelain wine pot. He occasionally took a draw, a slightly sardonic smile on his face. The people sitting here, how many of them were really happy due to the emperor's birthday? It was just a play that everyone knew of, but each person deceived themselves. If they couldn't fake it to others, they still needed to fake it to themselves. The emperor has arrived, the empress has arrived. He turned to look and saw the emperor and empress holding hands as they walked in from the doorway. One wearing a black robe bordered in red, one wearing a vermilion floor-length dress. The picture was beautiful. The hand he had on the wine cup slightly froze and then he stood with the others in kneeling to welcome the emperor. Seeing the vermilion dress slide across his eyes, he felt as though something was sliding across his heart, sour and difficult to bear, as though his breath was caught, the suffocation making his head ring. Everyone rise. He Hing and Chu Qingju held hands as they sat down on the wide two-person chair. With a slight smile, he said, just one of Zhen's birthdays. To trouble everyone here, Zhen really feels grateful. Everyone hurriedly kowtowed and expressed that the emperor was exaggerating. They really sincerely were happy for the emperor and were loyal etc. etc. After the officials did the 3 bows and 9 kowtows to congratulate He Hing on his birthday, He Hing bestowed the seats. Then it was the envoys from all the subordinate countries to enter the hall to offer their tributes. Chu Qingju noticed that there was great care in the order the subordinate countries came in. It seemed the earlier the envoys of the countries came in, the more they were favored by He Hing. After 7 or 8 subordinate countries offered their gifts, Chu Qingju finally heard the name that she was interested in. The country of Jing's imperial Sun Tu heir, and Princess Dai Rong for an audience. Summon. Chu Qingju looked with a smile towards the door and saw a male and female wearing clothing of a different culture come in. It seemed that both of them were very young. 2 servants followed behind them. Tu heir and Dai Rong of the country of Jing congratulates His Majesty the Emperor. May you live a long life, and along be prosperous and flourishing. Dai Rong walked into the center of the hall and gave a local greeting with all her grace. Thinking that her Jing was the second last to enter the hall, she felt dissatisfied. Even a small country like Wei was put in front of her Jing country. The rights officials of Delong might be underestimating them too much. Qian Chang Xian looked at the emperor. Seeing the emperor slightly raise his hand, he hollered, "Excused, rise." Thanks to the honored His Majesty the Emperor and Empress. Tu heir also made a bow and stood up together with his sister. He took advantage of his movement to quickly glance at the Empress. He saw a woman who was even younger than his Mimi, wearing a grand robe brighter and redder than a fresh flower. This was the first time he saw a woman more suited than his Mimi to wear a red dress. You two have come such a long distance. Zhen is very grateful to the two of you. He Hing raised a hand. Please sit. The honored Your Majesty the Emperor is too polite. To be able to come celebrate your birthday, it is this one and Mimi's great fortune. This one's mother has prepared a birthday gift for Your Majesty the Emperor and hopes that Your Majesty the Emperor will like it. Tu Air turned to take the gift box from the hands of his servant behind him and raised it with both hands. Please, honored Your Majesty the Emperor, take a look. Qian Chang Xian walked down the 9 steps of stairs and took the gift box from Tu Air's hands. He first quickly opened it to see if there was any poisonous gas or concealed weapons before bowing and presenting the box with both hands in front of He Hing. He Hing took over the gift box. Inside there was a mutton fat jade pendant carved into the shape of 2 lotus flowers on the same stalk. He closed the box, remarking, "The ruler of Jing has spent effort. Please sit." Tu Air couldn't see any of He Hing's emotions from his face and could only sit down with his sister. Because of the flutterings in his heart, he didn't even notice what the country of Duohan that came after them had sent. Since there were birthday wishes from the envoys of subordinate countries, naturally there had to be dances that showed the prosperity of Delong. Many of the envoys, when they saw the beautiful dances of Delong's dancers, forgot to even take up their chopsticks, their faces full of awe. It satisfied many of Delong's officials' vanity. Chu Qingju looked at He Hing beside him and found that his expression was extremely calm, as though the state of the envoys didn't please him. She nodded inside. These envoys might belong to the subordinate countries, but they were all nobility from those countries. None of them would show such their inexperience just because of a dance. It was deliberately pretending to act so ignorant to please the people of Delong. To be able to be an envoy, it required a thick skin. Your country's dance moves one's heart. This little woman wants to show everyone a dance from Jing. Will Your Majesty the Emperor allow it? Like this one, her skin wouldn't be thin. Chu Qingju looked at the Huguo princess dressed in red who had spoken, and the smile on her face grew wider. Chapter 113 The prosperity blinds one's eyes. No one felt surprised by the Princess of Jing's proposal. There were even officials who gave dubious smiles that they thought they hid well, as though they knew what the Princess of Jing was thinking and were waiting to see a good show. A princess of a minor country giving a dance of her own initiative in front of this many people. No one would believe that she didn't have any ulterior motives. But right now, the Empress was still present. This method that this Princess of Jing took was too straightforward. To try to seduce the Emperor in front of the Empress, was this because she was confident in her beauty, or just that she didn't have any brains? After He Hing heard the request from the Princess of Jing, he didn't immediately agree, but turned to look at Chu Qingju. It was as though he was asking her if she was interested in the dances of a different culture. Ben Gong has heard that the country of Jing's Huguo Princess Beauty is the most beautiful in the countries and can dance the world's most beautiful dance. Today, seeing the princess, if we cannot see the princess dance in our palace, it would be such a pity. Chu Qingju gave a dignified smile. Please, princess, dance. Dai Rong didn't think that the person who would speak would be the Empress of Delong and not His Highness the Emperor. She first froze for a beat before standing and bowing, responding, "Great thanks to the Empress, this little woman will display her meager talents." She took off the boots on her feet, and the large robe on her body, revealing a grand attire full of exoticness. When the men and women present saw her actions, they were slightly shocked. But thinking about the cultural differences between countries, they didn't reveal their reactions blatantly. But inside, they couldn't resist comparing this Huguo princess to the dancers. Because in this type of setting, the noble women wouldn't lower themselves to display their talents, but would use dancers instead to raise the mood. Also, the most beautiful dance in the world. A pellet-sized country dares to boast so. It was really ignorant and narrow-minded. Chu Qingju looked at the bare arms and flat stomach that Dai Rong showed after she took off her outer robe and smiled slightly as she raised the teacup. Her gaze swept across the Jing country's musicians who had been invited in, and leaned to whisper into Yi Heng's ear, "This princess of Jing's waist looks so enticing, it's like a willow branch. It makes one want to go and touch." What she said was the truth. This Huguo princess might have skin that was slightly tanned, it didn't comply with the sense of beauty of the men of Dalong, but her features were extremely beautiful, and her figure also extremely hot. She was like a very flavorful pepper. Not a necessity, but when one looked, they couldn't stop thinking about wanting to have a taste. He Hing carelessly looked at the woman who was twisting her waist like an eel. He thought back to how Chu Qingju looked when she had been flying dressed in red and laughed lightly in her ear. Compared to Qingju, she's only just so. In his mind, this Huguo princess did have some attractiveness, but it wasn't something that was rare in the world. On the other hand, it was the intangible charm that Chu Qingju showed during her dance that moved his heart. A tasteful woman is like old wine. The more one tasted, the more flavor there was to savor. And not like this kind of strong spirit where there was some taste at first taste, but if more was drank, how was it different from the rotgut liquors sold on the streets? Dai Rong's movements became even more provocative, like a poisonous viper that unconsciously attracted the gaze of many males. When they looked at her moving waist, there were only two words in their mind: beautiful creature. As the drums beat faster, the bare feet of Dai Rong spun even faster. The second the drums stopped, she made a pose with her hands together and one of her feet slightly curled, as though a seductive goddess suddenly took away all her magic, and once again became a noble princess. He Hing had just focused on talking with Chu Qingju and didn't pay any serious attention at all to how this Huguo princess had danced. Seeing her finish, he raised his hand. This dance of the Princess of Jing's truly has a certain style. What do you think, Empress? Emperor is right, Chu Qingju smiled as she followed. The princess is as beautiful as the burning sun. How about Ben Gong gives that red jade hairpin from Ben Gong stores to the princess? It would really mean that this hairpin won't be neglected. Many thanks to the honored Your Majesty the Emperor and Empress. Dai Rong saw that He Hing didn't seem to be attracted by her dancing. She did feel regretful, but her opinion of He Hing became higher. A man that wasn't easily swayed by beauty, it made her feel that he was more of a challenge than normal men, but it is one of Empress' favored objects. This one can't take away something from the other. The princess is too polite. Qingju smiled faintly as she touched the golden phoenix buyao in her hair. Or does the princess looks down on Ben Gong's hairpin? This one doesn't dare. Dai Rong saw that the Empress didn't have a good expression and hurriedly bowed, replying, "Many thanks for Empress' gift." No need to be polite. Chu Qingju's smile eased. Ben Gong has heard that the queen of your country has been ill lately. Earlier, Ben Gong has heard many of the queen's wise deeds and is very admiring of her. When imperial son and princess return, please give Ben Gong's goodwill to the queen. Hearing the Empress mention his mother, Tu Air also stood up and stopped beside his Mimi. He respectfully made a bow. Many thanks for Empress' concern. If mother knows of this matter, she would definitely recover due to happiness. Chu Qingju smiled. Imperial son is too serious. It does seem that both of you are giants among men. Who is the eldest and youngest? She raised a teacup to sip at the surface of the tea, her tone extremely calm, as though she was only casually asking. Empress, this one is the eldest. Tu Air remembered that he seemed to have called Dai Rong by Mimi in the hall already. Even without the appellation, Dalong should have already known who was the eldest already due to their envoy status. But since the Empress was asking it right in front of him, then he could only obediently reply. So that's how it is. Chu Qingju nodded, turning her head to speak to He Hing. Didn't the queen have a matter for emperor to decide? Chia feels that right now is a good time. All the major officials and the envoys from the countries are here, it's fitting to settle the matter. By this time, everyone present became silent, their gaze flickering between Tu Er and Dai Rong. Even though everyone knew what matter the Empress spoke of, but no one had thought that the Empress would boldly take up the topic. But knowing that the letter had been written by the Jing's queen, it was normal for the Empress to have viewed it. If Empress hadn't mentioned it, Shen would have almost forgot. He naturally didn't need to spend much time on such a small matter. Furthermore, he was partial to Tu Er as the successor. The kind of woman that Dai Rong was had too much ambition. For the Dalong dynasty, it didn't need a subordinate country's ruler to have such great ambitions. Not long ago, the Queen of Jing had sent a letter to Zhen hoping to pick a successor between the two of you. Based on what Zhen has seen, both of you are very able. It really is hard to make a decision. By now, the officials who had received presents from Dai Rong beforehand didn't dare to speak. They weren't dumb. Just now, the Empress had implied that the imperial son Tu Er was the elder, and Dai Rong Princess was the younger. If they were so blind to help speak for Dai Rong Princess, wasn't that working against the Empress? Emperor, imperial son and princess are both D, but there is the order of seniority. Wei Qin thinks that imperial son Tu Er should be made crown prince. The Duke of Zhong stood and raised his hands in a fist, declaring, if none of the heirs have done anything wrong, the best choice is the eldest among the D. Once the Duke of Zhongyi's words came out, many of the senior officials came out to second it. None of them abandoned their standpoint just because Dai Rong was a gorgeous woman. Since that is the case, Shen will title imperial son Tu Er as the crown prince, and write an imperial decree for the envoys to take back to Jing to read. He lowered his head slightly, revealing an approving expression. Since the matter is settled, the banquet will continue. Dai Rong didn't think that the position of crown princess would slip away so silently. Before coming here, Mother had clearly implied that the Emperor of Dalong favored her, but at this time, she couldn't see any sign of protection from the Emperor. She was the most favored and popular princess of Jing. Even her mother had used Hugua as her title. But why did His Majesty the Emperor turn away and establish her Gij? Tu Er didn't think that the position of crown prince would come so suddenly. He first dropped in a daze for a few seconds before remembering to kneel and give thanks. He didn't know if he was thinking too much, but he felt that if the Empress hadn't said what she had just said, maybe this position of crown prince wouldn't have been delegated to him. But why did the Empress help him? He suddenly stared with a complicated expression at his Mimi who was kneeling beside him. He had heard that Empress of Dalong was very appreciative of able women. If Mimi hadn't given this dance, and became slightly close with the Empress, would he have what he did now? Earlier, he had said that Mimi would use the wrong methods, but she persisted in believing that all the women of Dalong were gentle and virtuous. Why didn't she think, even the women of Jing had many different personalities, so how about the vast and abundant Dalong? Where in this world would there be women who were all the same? Mimi had lost because she was too egotistical and overconfident. She didn't believe in the sincerity of the feelings between the Emperor and Empress. But this imperial couple before them, they were not what she had expected. Perhaps, this is the so-called fate. Even as the birthday banquet finished, Dai Rong Princess still hadn't recovered from the blow of losing her position as successor. When the banquet had ended, and she had walked out of Wonhee Hall to feel the cold wind and saw the exploding fireworks in the sky, she finally slowly woke up. She really failed. Gij already became the successor recognized by the Emperor of Dalong. What was the use of a princess who couldn't succeed the throne? After returning to the country, she could only find a Fuma, and then have children, and then slowly age away in the Princess Fu. Those kind of days were too scary. She wanted to be the high-up queen. If she couldn't be queen, wouldn't the pride she had before become a joke? Raising her head, she saw the blinding fireworks. She had heard that it wasn't difficult to make this kind of fireworks, but the crucial step was the dosage used. Her country couldn't produce it, so they had to spend much wealth buying it from DeLong. So unless it was an important occasion, they wouldn't use such valuable objects, and couldn't have such a show of such duration like DeLong. It was just a birthday of an emperor, yet they would have a fireworks show for this long. By now, the banquet attendees had dispersed, but they still continued to set them off, as though those things were worthless, that even a child on the street could light one and play. A prosperous and flourishing DeLong, a poor Jing. Dai Rong Princess Steps paused. She turned to look at the majestic and luxurious Wanhee Hall. Even the jade steps and pillars outside the hall were so tasteful and extraordinary. Then how lavish were the days of the women who lived in the imperial palace. Not far away, a procession held beautiful lanterns as they escorted an unbelievably beautiful phoenix carriage. Following behind the carriage were pretty palace maids dressed finely. Such an extravagant scene made her slightly dazed. She couldn't resist asking a guard outside the Wanhee Hall, "Who is sitting in that beautiful carriage?" The guard saw that it was a princess of a subordinate country and politely answered, "That is the phoenix carriage of the Empress." Because the Empress had already left with the Emperor, so most of the phoenix carriage's attendants have left together with the imperial carriage. This kind of procession when there was no one inside. Dai Rong Princess felt astonishment. If the Empress was sitting inside, then how grand would the scene be? Was this the life inside the imperial palace of DeLong? No wonder Mother had always talked about how rich and prosperous DeLong was. She had thought it was just Mother exaggerating. Coming to DeLong personally, she finally knew that the actual DeLong was even more prosperous and marvelous than her mother had said. She watched dazedly as the phoenix carriage proceeded further away, and couldn't help but falling into a trance. If she could also live this kind of luxurious life in the future, it would be wonderful. Right now, she couldn't become the future ruler of Jing, but if she could become an imperial fae in DeLong and live such a sumptuous life, it also wasn't a bad choice. Didn't they say that the women the Emperor of DeLong favored were even more honored than the Empress? If she could become that woman that was even more honored than the Empress, by then, would she still have to send gifts to flatter the minor officials of DeLong? The throne of Jing wasn't anything. Even if Gij became king, when he met her, he would still have to bow to her. Moreover, even the Empress wouldn't dare to use such a proud attitude towards her. Chapter 114 I Am Yours. The incident of the Princess of Jing giving a dance at the birthday banquet very quickly spread throughout Jing. Many people who liked to gossip began to speculate on how was the princess dance, how beautiful she was. There were even people who started to say that the emperor was going to take the princess into the Hogong. The people of Jing had seen many things and naturally guessed that the Jing princess hadn't simply offered a dance, rather, she wanted to display herself in front of the emperor. A woman trying hard to show off her attributes in front of another man, if she didn't have any other motives, it was a bit suspicious. At one time, the rumors about the princess from Jing increased. Some said that they saw the Jing princess buying jewelry at certain stores, and then incense at another store. All of the rumors had one similarity: the princess of Jing was very beautiful and could steal a soul with a glance. The rumors became stronger and stronger. It gradually became how devastatingly beautiful Dai Rong Princess of Jing was, and how in love she was with the emperor. But the emperor was obstructed by the empress and had to painfully stop himself from taking Dai Rong Princess into the Hogong. The empress had already been married for 2 or 3 years to the emperor, she even had a child, but she really was too overbearing by occupying the emperor and not allowing him to take other fae. Some men felt that the empress wasn't virtuous enough. Other women had slightly sour hearts and said the empress wasn't generous enough. By the end, Dai Rong Princess became that innocent and beloved woman, and the empress was the evil wife who used her position to bully the princess. When the rumors from outside passed into Chu Qingju's ears, she was playing with Tun Tun and his small drum. When she finished hearing Huang Yang's report, her face held mirth as she remarked, "Such a good story. When did the emperor take pity on this beauty that is Dai Rong princess, and when did he have to endure abandoning her?" When the room heard the words, the people all held their breath as they stood, afraid that the empress would get angry. The emperor is master of Delong, he doesn't need to hesitate if he wants to take a woman. Control the court, balance the Hogong. Chu Qingju sneered, only a useless emperor will rely on women to govern the court. Ben Gong thinks that the people who spread these rumors have ulterior motives. An unfounded rumor, but it affected both the court and the Hogong. Even some of the senior officials that He placed importance were involved in the rumor. Those senior officials became the rebellious officials who had taken control of the court, and herself, the empress, was the mastermind in the shadows, while He was the trapped and suffering emperor. There were many noble families in Jing. Usually when something happened, there were many different versions, yet this time, all of the rumors were so similar, so it meant that someone certainly was manipulating them in the background. The main targets were her and Zhong Yigongfu. If He felt even a hint of dislike for her, then when the rumors streamed into his ear, that bit of dislike would become a lot. The tactic wasn't clever but very useful. It ruined her reputation, affected the reputations of the strong officials in court, and was also involved the subordinate countries. Right now, the envoys from all the superior countries were still in Jing. If this Dai Rong princess returned peacefully and safely to the country of Jing like this, what would the envoys of the subordinate think? Thinking all this, Chu Qingju frowned. She watched as Tun Tun's fat hands finally grabbed the rattle drum, and laughed because of the sounds he made. Her brow steadily smoothed out, and as she rubbed Tun Tun's face, she said, "Since there are so many rumors, let's make them even livelier." Huang Yan hesitated. Nyang Nyang means to, right now, there are suddenly rumors spreading around Jing, and it happened just after Emperor's birthday. Is it that people are deliberately spreading rumors? This kind of movement will shake the support of Delong itself, it is too terrifying, Chu Qingju sighed. As a citizen of Delong, I really feel hatred for this kind of person. When Huang Yan heard the words, his eyes lit up, and he instantly responded, "Nukai understands." Half a day later, some of the people in Jing became suspicious. Everyone knew how virtuous and kind the empress was and how deep her love was with the emperor. The emperor had even written on the coronation decree that the empress was a blessing from the heavens. How was it that after just a few days, it became the empress was jealous, and the emperor and empress were only pretending to be together and weren't really in love? And as for the officials who had been harmed by the rumors, they all had done good things for the public. How did they all become rebels? Was it those people with ulterior motives that deliberately spread those rumors, wanting to harm the empress and the other upright and honorable Darren? Then who was the person manipulating the rumors? Were they enemies of Delong, or traitors to Delong itself? The city of Jing never lacked for intelligent people. The stronger the original rumors became, the more they felt suspicious. When the speculation came out, they threw out many suspects, such as traitors, people from the subordinate countries, Dai Rong princess who wanted to enter the Hogong, the Qin family who was at odds with the empress, and the brothers of the emperor. Slowly, more and more people began to doubt the past rumors and started to feel righteous indignation. They started to roll up their sleeves to find the true mastermind. As to whether they were really angry, or just wanting to get in on the fuss, it depended on what each spectator thought. In the imperial study, He looked at the major officials under him. They were all the rebel officials who had been in cahoots with the empress in the rumors. Thinking about the ridiculous rumors, He smiled as he comforted, "Aiqing doesn't have to blame yourselves. Zhen never cares about this kind of false rumors. Zhen has eyes to see what kind of people you all really are, and won't just listen to the rumors." Tianjin Cook stepped forward with a grave face. He raised his hands in a greeting as he responded, "It's Qin who is useless and has caused these kind of rumors to spread, harming the reputations of Emperor and the Empress. Please, Emperor, punish us." He was the junior justice of the Supreme Court. Even though he didn't have a direct connection with the matter, there was still some related points. Commander Sun of the Imperial Guards felt his heart shrink. As one of the traitorous officials who cooperated with the Empress, he wasn't just a target of the rumors, it was possible that he would be punished by the Emperor because he didn't manage to stop the rumors in time. When Tian Jin-ku had asked for punishment, he knelt down preemptively. He was directly connected to the matter. "Shen has already said that I Ching doesn't have to blame yourselves," he stood from the imperial table and personally helped them back up. "You are all pillars of the country. Shen is still hoping that you can do more things for Delong, and won't punish you for such a trivial matter." The hearts of the people presents warmed. To be able to have such a wise ruler as the Emperor, it really was their good fortune as officials and subjects. For the moment, many of the old men's eyes were filled with tears, and they all knelt down to thank the Emperor for his benevolence. Inside, they became even more resolute that they had to clear up the matter. Even though it became a minor matter due to the trust of the Emperor, they wouldn't tolerate this happening again. The only thing that Zhen is extremely worried about is that the Empress, originally a virtuous person, has been falsely accused by people with malicious aims. He sighed. Darren must all thoroughly and diligently find out the mastermind behind the scenes to restore justice for I Ching and the Empress. "Emperor, please don't worry, Qin will thoroughly investigate this matter," Commander Sun bowed as he responded. "By now, many people in Jing have already noticed the malicious aims of the villain in the shadows. Not many people still believe the rumors. The virtuousness and kindness of the Empress will not be stained by others." Luo Changqing raised an eyebrow at Commander Sunday. "Who said that soldiers had no brains? Look how well this one flattered." He raised his head to peek at the Emperor and, as expected, saw that the Emperor's smile had grown wider. He went forward a step, interjecting, "By now, many people in Jing are suspicious of the Princess of Jing, Duo Han and the Wang Yi. Wei Qin thinks due to how generous Emperor has been to the Wang Yi, they wouldn't have done such distasteful things." Luo Changqing dared to say this because, 1. The rumors were not beneficial to the solidarity of the imperial house, and 2. Because his granddaughter was married to Qing Wang. But no matter what, his suggestion wasn't wrong. He nodded, agreeing. Shen's brothers are all honest people. Shen believes that they aren't that kind of people. Not long after the Darren left the imperial study, many of the people in Jing knew of the words the Emperor had said and were deeply moved by the depth of friendship with which the Emperor treated the Wang Yi. They also felt if the Wang Yi weren't loyal to the Emperor, then they were really cruel and unscrupulous people. In Qing Wang Fu, He Ming finally breathed a sigh of relief when he finished hearing the servant's report. He walked into the room of the Wang Fei who was in her confinement period. Seeing that she was holding their child, he smiled and asked, "Is Wang Er still asleep?" Luo Wenyao saw him coming in with a smile and gave the child to his nursemaid. "Did something good happen?" He Ming faithfully narrated the events and sighed at the end. "Emperor and Empress treat us so well, but I am limited in what I can do for Emperor. Wang Yi and the Emperor are blood brothers. Feelings cannot be calculated like this," Luo Wenyao urged. "A few days ago, Mu Jin, one of the Empress attendants, had specially come to visit Xia, and told me a lot of things. Is this because the Empress expects Xia to pay her back for all of this?" I had thought too narrow-mindedly. He Ming went forward to hug her, not caring about the unclean state she was in due to her confinement. He said ruefully, "With Yao Yao here, I don't feel sad at all." Luo Wenyao laughed quietly, the happiness on her face clear for all to see. She had the fidelity of her husband's son, what reason did she have to not be happy? In the rear hall of Tian Qi Palace, Chu Qingju took down her hairpins and jewelry. Rubbing her shoulders, she said, "The days are getting colder. Jean Jean and Yuzan sorted the hairpins and jewelry to be placed away in their boxes. Mu Jin used a rhinoceros horn comb to brush Chu Qingju's hair. Hearing that, she replied, "It's already deep autumn, the weather always changes quickly now." "That's so true, winter is almost here." Chu Qingju curled her lips. "I heard that the winters of the country of Jing are especially harsh. Once it enters the winter months, it's all wrapped in silver silk. I wonder what it looks like." "The country of Jing is a poor place. When it's winter, the people don't have good days." Mu Jing's hands were brushing her hair at a perfect pace. She smiled, saying, "Nubi doesn't know much, but feels if the people of the country of Jing saw the prosperity of our Dalong, they wouldn't want to leave." "Really?" Chu Qingju took off the jade bangle on her wrist and suddenly smiled, declaring, "Not willing to leave, then they should stay here." Mu Jin's hands stilled. She didn't know what the Empress meant. Hesitating, she asked, "Why should such people stay here? Wouldn't it make more trouble for others?" "Peaceful days will make people forget the beauty of the past." Chu Qingju smiled. "Remaining doesn't have to be a good thing. You have to know that the prosperity of others doesn't have to be yours. You dare to scheme against others, then you have to know that others will scheme back." When He Hing arrived at the rear hall, Chu Qingju had already changed into her sleep robes and was leaning on the bed as she read. He furrowed his brows, going forward to reproach, "Reading so late, it'll harm the eyes." Chu Qingju closed the book in her hands. She smiled, answering, "Just bored, waiting for you to come back to sleep." Just those words were enough to make He Heng's heart move. He took off his own clothing and made a feast of the beauty. Afterward, the two of them lay in satisfaction on the bed, Chu Qingju on He Heng's chest. "I saw that your mood hasn't been well these few days. Is it because of those words outside the palace?" "It's just rumors. When the people get bored, they won't pass it on anymore. It's not worth it to be affected by those things. For whom am I getting angry on behalf of?" He Hing smiled helplessly. "The rumors are targeted towards you. I can't not be angry. These people are targeting me, that means that they hate me inside." Chu Qingju smiled, replying, "Only daring to attack from the back, it means that there are many things these people have to consider. Why should I care for such people?" "Well, look how clearly you think," He Hing smiled. Then suddenly his tone turned cold. "I have already found the people in the shadows." Chu Qingju stared with wide eyes at him, looking curious. "Who are they?" "The Qin family and the princess from Jing." He Hing sneered, "that these people from two sides can work together, they really have skill." Chu Qingju stared blankly and then hummed, "I just knew that Dai Rong princess is interested in you. To do such things for you, she really is in love." "In love after just one meeting?" He Hing gathered her in his arms. "Don't accuse me wrongly. What she's in love with is my position, not me. I'm innocent." The tips of Chu Qingju's feet stroked on the front of his feet. "Regardless, this Dai Rong princess is interested in you. But why is the Qin family meddling in this matter?" He Hing sighed helplessly. "Did you forget that the Qin family wanted to send someone into the Hogong?" Chu Qingju displayed an expression of realization. A beat later, she teased, "If you were just a Wang Yi, there wouldn't be this many women looking at you." Even though he was happy at the possessiveness his woman had towards him, the words just didn't seem right. Was it only his position that attracted others? No, that's not right. Even if you are a Wang Yi, there would be many women looking at you. Chu Qingju's brow furrowed as she mused, "Really want to lock you up, and not let anybody else see you." This complaint made He Heng's heart beat faster. He flipped to push her under him, gently kissing Chu Qingju's ear. "I, originally, am yours." Chu Qingju's eyes stared at his. Seeing his two eyes filled with emotion, she reached around his neck. You are mine. /N Chapter 115. A liberal culture. Waking up in the morning, Chu Qing-ju looked beside her. The space had become empty, the light coming in through the windows. She rubbed her forehead as she got up. It seemed to be late in the morning. The palace attendants waiting outside heard the noise from inside, and quickly came in with the washing tools. They served her to get out of bed and change. After everything was prepared, she then sat in front of the table to sedately eat the morning meal. Mu Jing, how many days until Qing Wang Fei's confinement ends? When the child was 1 month old, they would have a month-old banquet. She didn't need to personally go, but it would be good to prepare what she needed to give. About 10 more days. Is Nyang worried about what to give for the month-old banquet? Mu Jin handed over a handkerchief for Chu Qing-ju to wipe her hands and then a lotion for Chu Qing-ju to rub on. After entering autumn, the wind became stronger. If the hands weren't taken care of, they wouldn't look good after a few days. Chu Qing-ju rubbed her hands against each other and sighed, the wives of the noble families, this back and forth isn't something easy. Any other person, I can hand off for someone else to do, but not Qing Wang Fei. Thinking some more, she eventually had them prepare things that would help a woman recover and things that infants could use. For other people, she only had to give things that looked good. But she and Luo Wenyao had some feelings between them, so she naturally had to repay her for her sincerity. Today's weather is good to take a walk. Chu Qing-ju thought for a second, let the nursemaid take His Highness Imperial Son out to walk as well. Mu Jin hurriedly let the others prepare. She saw that the Empress' expression didn't seem right and couldn't resist asking, Nyang, should the phoenix carriage be prepared? No need, we'll just walk outside. Chu Qing-ju stood to walk to the door. The warm sunlight spilled onto her body, making her dazed for an instant. She raised her head to look at the sky and turned back and saw that the nursemaid had already carried Tun over. Smiling, she said, let's go. When the Empress set out, even though there wasn't a troop of servants before and after her, there were still many attendants that followed. Even more, there were quite a few servants that were there to take care of Tun. Chu Qing-ju walked over the white jade bridge over the lotus pond and entered the imperial gardens. Looking at the blooming chrysanthemums, she suddenly realized that autumn had really arrived. Passing by a pavilion, Chu Qing-ju stopped walking. She turned back to look at that pavilion in the midst of the flowers, asking with a raised eyebrow, winter last year, didn't Han Liangdi sing there for the emperor? Mu Jin didn't know why the Empress would suddenly mention Han Liangdi. She looked at the pavilion, nodding, Nyang, what is it? Nothing, Chu Qing-ju sighed, seemingly in regret, just rueful. Almost a year has passed in the blink of an eye. Time passes so quickly. Nyang doesn't have to think about these things. Mu Jin smiled as she supported Chu Qing-ju's wrist. Nubi heard the black chrysanthemums over there have flowered well. Do you want to see? No, Tun is still little. It's not good to be too close to the flowers. Chu Qing-ju pointed to a stone table near a fake mountain not far away. Let's go sit there. We can also soak in some sun. Tea and pastries quickly were put on the stone table. A soft cushion was put on the stone bench. Chu Qing-ju sat down on the bench. Seeing Tun looked around at the surroundings with wide eyes, she knew that he was curious about the outside scenery, so she let the nursemaid carry him to see the surroundings. Listening to his happy cries, she couldn't resist laughing. Children are just children, anything can make them happy. His Highness is clever. Mu Jin put out a cup of hot tea for Chu Qing-ju, then turned to give a handbell to His Highness the Imperial Son. Seeing him happily grasp the handbell, she remarked happily, His Highness grips it so steadily and can wave it around. He really has strong wrists. Almost half a year old, it isn't strange that he can grasp things. Chu Qing-ju smiled as she informed, not long from now, he should be able to crawl. Mu Jin smiled as she bowed, Nyang, don't laugh at Nubi for making a fuss. Nubi thinks anything that His Highness does is good. Chu Qingju laughed at her words. When she turned her head, she saw a procession that surprised her. She asked with a furrowed brow, "What is going on there?" Mu Jin looked into the distance and saw Ming He leading some womenfolk around the imperial gardens. Most of the womenfolk were the foreign of the envoys of the subordinate countries, but the princess from the country of Jing was also among them. "Nubi will go ask," Mu Jin bowed, and turned to walk in the direction of Ming He and the others. Because several of the foreign of the officials and the princess had looked forward to seeing the imperial gardens of Dalong, Ming He had to, under the imperial order, serve them to tour the imperial gardens. But thinking about the rumors from outside about the princess of Jing and the empress, his heart was bitter. If the empress saw, he didn't know what would happen. Just when he was thinking it inside, he saw Mu Jin coming over when he raised his head. He sighed inside, but forced a smile onto his face. He went forward a few steps, exchanging bows with Mu Jin. "Where is Mu Jin Gunyang coming from? The empress can't be without your service." Ming He Gonggong is exaggerating, Mu Jin smiled and looked at the womenfolk behind him. She gave a shallow bow. "Nubi Mu Jin greets everyone." These women might not have recognized Mu Jin, but all knew that there was a high-ranked palace maid called Mu Jin that was especially favored by the empress. Additionally, when they saw that Ming He's attitude towards Mu Jin was especially friendly, they were certain to Mu Jin's identity. Then they all gave slight smiles, and exchanged some pleasantries with Mu Jin using their basic knowledge of Dalong language. Because all the foreign has never toured the imperial gardens, so Nukai has been ordered by the emperor to accompany the foreign to walk the garden, Ming He said with a faint smile, "Didn't think to encounter Mu Jin Gunyang. Nyang Nyang is drinking tea up front. She saw you leading the women into the garden, so she let Nubi come ask." Mu Jin's gaze swept in the direction of the princess of Jing, her smile not changing as she responded, "Since Gonggong is busy, I won't disturb any further." It seems that the emperor didn't think much of the foreign of the envoys. Otherwise the one receiving them wouldn't be Ming He. At the very least, it would be a noblewoman of some significant status or a foreign from the imperial house. "Since the empress is here, we should greet the empress," the foreign of the envoy from Dongyut said in a respectful tone. "If it wasn't that the Huguo princess that especially asked, we wouldn't have the good fortune to enter the palace for a tour. To greet the empress, it is our good fortune." Mu Jin smiled as she looked at the Dongyu envoy's foreign. This envoy's wife said what seemed to be a normal and casual sentence, but in reality it was expressing goodwill towards the empress. She followed with a smile, answering, "Nubi doesn't dare to make a decision. Please, honored guest, wait for Nubi to inform the empress." Watching Mu Jin walk towards the fake mountain in the front, Dai Rong couldn't help looking more at the fake mountain. When her movements were spotted by Ming He's eyes, he thought scornfully, "Country ignoramuses are country ignoramuses. Just this kind of scheming, any palace maid in the Hogong is stronger than her." It seems that the country of Jing was one generation worse than the previous. When Chu Qingju heard Mu Jin's report, her brows slightly furrowed, a special request from the princess of Jing. Having said that, she couldn't resist snorting. It seems that she is exceptionally interested in our Dalong's Hogong. All right, let them come. Ben Gong wants to get to know this princess of Jing. She looked at Tun Tun, who was still playing with the handbell, and said to the nursemaids, "Take Tun Tun back to the rear hall of Tian Chi Palace, don't let anyone casually near His Highness." The nursemaids obediently left, not even turning to look back. Hearing that the empress was willing to see them, the wives of the envoys all gave smiles. They were highly ranked in their own countries, but compared with the noblewomen of Dalong, they weren't really anything. Once they came to the city of Jing, they carefully managed their speech and conduct. Whenever they met a noblewoman from one of the noble families, they were extremely courteous. The fact that the empress was willing to meet them, it was a happy unexpected occurrence. The procession followed in Mu Jin's footsteps next to the fake mountain when they saw a woman dressed in a white floor-length dress embroidered with red flowers lazily sitting on the stone table. Her black hair was restrained in a beautiful and exquisite fidianji. All of her hair ornaments and jewelry were finely made. But what made them lose their focus the most wasn't the grand decorations, but the Empress' own composure and beauty. Just a glance was enough to make them feel inferior, but at the same time, they felt it was appropriate that the Empress of Delong should be this noble and beautiful, that it was natural that they couldn't compete with the Empress. When they saw the Empress, they couldn't find any jealousy, only admiration and reverence. Chinfu is the Furen of Dongyu's Prime Minister, greets the honored Empress. The womenfolk came up one by one to pay their respects to Chu Qingju. They all gave the full greetings of their own countries. Before their arrival, Chu Qingju had learned a basic understanding of their customs and politely allowed the womenfolk to take a seat. The country of Jing's Dai Rong greets the honored Empress. This was the first time that Dai Rong saw the Empress at such a close distance. She examined Chu Qingju from top to bottom. Even though she wasn't willing, she still had to admit that this Empress was somewhat beautiful. Huguo Princess doesn't have to be this courteous, Chu Qingju indicated for her to sit. Ben Gong remembers you. Your dance in Luanhe Hall was very beautiful. Didn't think that Empress would remember this one isn't worthy. Dai Rong's face was full of bashfulness, coming to the Imperial Gardens for the first time and being able to encounter Empress. It really is our great fortune. You all like to mention fortune, but Ben Gong feels that it is destiny. Chu Qingju smiled as she raised a teacup. Everyone, come taste our Delong's tea. It isn't anything rare, but the taste is still good. Delong's tea is worth 1,000 gold in our countries. It is very valuable. The Furen of the envoy from Dongyu smiled as she took a drink. The tea that the Empress has, it really is a rare and seldom one. If you like it, when you return, take some back. Chu Qingju smiled as she responded, coming from so far away to celebrate Emperor's birthday, it must have been hard. His Majesty the Emperor is brave and outstanding. To celebrate His Highness the Emperor's birthday, there is no hardship. Dai Rong put down the teacup, smiling and said, His Majesty the Emperor is a god in my country of Jing. All the people of Jing would never find it hard for our gods. Ah, Chu Qingju raised an eyebrow at Dai Rong. Then all of Jing is full of loyalty for my Delong. Of course, my Jing's heart towards Delong is like shining like the sun and moon. Dai Rong's eyes met Chu Qingju's. This one believes that the honored His Majesty Jia you will be one of those wise rulers seen once in 1,000 years. The two's eyes met in the air. Chu Qingju found that the other had a pair of beautiful eyes. She gave a faint smile. As the Empress of Delong, I'm very grateful for the loyalty that the people of Jing feels towards Delong. De Rong followed. So, as the Huguo Princess of Jing, I'm willing, for the honored His Majesty Jia Yu Emperor, to become his fae. Chu Qingju laughed out loud. She had heard that the culture of country of Jing was extremely liberal, and the relationships between men and women were relaxed. Hearing Dai Rong's words today, she finally understood what a liberal culture was like. Chapter 116 A heavy blow. The words of Dai Rong shocked many people. Especially Ming He. He felt his legs weaken. If he had known that this Huguo princess was this bold, today, he wouldn't have done this. If the Empress thought that he had deliberately ushered the person in front of her, then would he have any more good days to live? The Furen of Dongyu's envoy stared with shock and wide eyes. She used the teacup to conceal her open mouth. She couldn't resist looking at the Empress. How would the Empress resolve this matter? Chu Qingju was slightly surprised at the actions of Dai Rong to recommend herself into the Emperor's bed, but she quickly calmed down. She had heard before about the liberal nature of the country of Jing. Even though she hadn't thought that this Dai Rong princess would speak so blankly of the matter, but it wasn't as though she would lose her composure due to it. Elegantly putting down the teacup in her hands, she used a handkerchief embroidered with a beautiful design to wipe her lips. Where does the princess words come from? If you are in love with the emperor, why not tell him, instead of telling Ben Gong? This one heard that the Empress of Delong has the power to manage the Hogong. Then the expansion of the Hogong should be your duty. This one telling you of the matter, it should meet protocol. Dai Rong Princess stood from the bench and gave a full bow in the style of Delong to Chu Qingju. Dai Rong sincerely is in love with the emperor and begs Empress to fulfill this request. Dai Rong's actions were nothing but forcing the Empress to admit her position. At the side, Yin Lu and the others were gritting their teeth, but due to their status, they stood quietly at the side. The other foreign of the envoys from subordinate countries felt awkward inside. Many of them had heard the rumors from before but knew very well how suspicious the rumors were. But they hadn't thought that this Dai Rong princess actually had an interest in His Majesty the Emperor of Delong. Right now, they regretted coming with Dai Rong princess to tour the gardens. Such an incident as this, they didn't know what expression was appropriate for this situation. Dai Rong princess isn't wrong. Ben Gong has the power to expand the Hogong. Chu Qingju smiled as she stood, looking from up high down at Dai Rong bent in front of her, but Ben Gong is Emperor's wife, and naturally cannot neglect Emperor's wishes and randomly take other women into the palace. If Princess truly is in love with the Emperor, you should confess to Emperor. If Emperor is willing to take you into the palace, Ben Gong naturally is happy for the palace to have another woman to serve the Emperor. Dai Rong didn't think the Empress would push the matter to His Majesty the Emperor. After a slight pause, she said, "If that's the case, then please, Empress, act on behalf of this one to express this true love to the Emperor. This one will thank Empress here and now." Finishing, she lifted her skirts and knelt. Even more, she put out a posture of prostration. Ming He saw the Princess of Jing's almost wretched-like actions and looked undetectably at the Empress. Right now, the Emperor should be leaving court. He didn't know if Xiao Ganzi would manage to lead the Emperor over. If this matter wasn't solved correctly, it would blow up. Thankfully, the conduct of the Empress was steady and dependable. If one step was wrong, right, if it is sincere, then why let others tell about it? Wouldn't that tarnish that true feeling? Chu Qingju went forward a few steps, reached a hand in front of Derong, and smiled widely. "Princess, please get up. The country of Jing might be a subordinate country of Delong, but you are still a princess of a country. How can you give such a big greeting to Ben Gong?" When the foreign of Dong Yu's envoy heard it, she felt embarrassed on behalf of Dai Rong. The Empress' words mocked her for lowering her status and being shameless. A princess, regardless of how small the country was, it was still a country. Her conduct represented the country. Right now, she was kneeling and begging just so she could enter the Hogong of Delong to become a Fapine. If the Queen of Jing knew of the conduct, what would she think? Dai Rong had a high opinion of herself, but she wasn't stupid. Naturally, she heard the implication in Chu Qingju's words. Looking at the hand that the other offered to her, she said in a respectful tone, "Don't dare to trouble Empress." And then she stood. She sighed somewhat tragically. This one is a woman. When would there be a time to meet the honored His Majesty the Emperor? It's just a futile hope to expect to accompany him. Princess has only seen the Emperor only a few times, but lost her heart. It really is deep love, and Ben Gong is very shocked. Chu Qingju's face gave a few hints of mirth, was scornful yet proud. If that's the case, why don't Ben Gong give you a chance for you to tell of your desires to the Emperor? When she finished speaking, her eyes looked towards the side of the fake mountain. There, standing, was He Hing dressed in the black dragon robes. The other's face was so calm, it was scary. Dai Rong seemed to detect that someone was behind her. When she turned to look, she hadn't thought it was the Emperor. She first stilled and then reacted, given a sweet smile and a graceful bow. greetings to the honored Your Majesty the Emperor. The other foreign of the envoys all followed in standing and making their bows. They were all married women and naturally knew how to read expressions. So it only took just a rough glance and they were able to see that the Emperor's expression wasn't too good, and seemed to be indistinctly angry. The atmosphere seemed to return back to when Dai Rong Princess recommended herself as a Fapine. He Hing walked to sit down next to Chu Qingju. He glanced at the Princess of Jing dressed seductively and said in a heavy tone, "Foreign, please rise." Dai Rong, who had been preparing to stand, swayed in her place. She hesitated but in the end still maintained her posture in greeting. He Hing didn't seem to have seen her, and exchanged a few words with the foreign of the envoys before become silent and only drinking tea on the side. The envoys foreign didn't know whether they should leave or sit at this time. They furtively looked at the Princess of Jing who was still locked in her position and didn't dare to breathe. They were all minor subordinate countries. If they encountered any disasters, they had to rely on Delong to give aid. No one dared to be disrespectful in front of Delong's emperor. Not to mention, even if the emperor of Delong found a reason to take one of their lives, they didn't dare to say anything. Thankfully, the generations of emperors of Delong were not tyrannical, so these years, the subordinate countries had relatively peaceful days. But if they really made the emperor angry, other than the fall of their country, they had no other road to walk. Chu Qingju was also aware the atmosphere wasn't good and said, "Why did Emperor come over?" "Zhen heard you came to walk in the garden and came to look." He Heng's tone softened greatly. He glanced at Chu Qingju and saw her expression was normal, and not angry due to the actions of the Princess of Jing before he smiled and added, "Zhen will wait to eat the noon meal with you." When the foreign of Dong Yu's envoy heard this, she couldn't help but feel disdain towards Dai Rong. The Emperor and Empress of Delong were in a harmonious relationship, but this Dai Rong princess was greedy and vain, wanting to enter the Hogong of Delong. It really was both stupid and shameless. Right now, she was a princess of Jing, so the Empress was still courteous to her. If she became one of the Fapine of the Hogong, with the weak strength that Jing had, if the Empress wanted to sort her out, the Empress would not have the slightest concern while doing so. Just now, Chia has heard something very touching from the Princess of Jing. Is the Emperor interested in listening? Chu Qingju looked cheerfully at He Hing. After Chia heard it, Chia was extremely shocked. The successor for the country of Jing has already been settled. Due to the separation of genders, Zhen and the Princess of Jing have nothing to discuss. He Hing put down the teacup, speaking icily, "Your Highness Princess, if your country has something to discuss with my Delong, then please let your country's crown princess to have an audience." "Emperor, this matter has nothing to do with state matters." Dai Rong looked at the frigid eyes of the Emperor of Delong. She already felt regret inside, but since the words had been spoken, she had to continue. "It's this one that is in love with Emperor, and begs for Emperor to take pity." Chu Qingju's eyebrows jumped and she raised a teacup to hide the corners of her lips that rose up. Zhen heard that the country of Jing is extremely liberal. Seeing the princess today, it does live up to the rumors. No pity was found in He Heng for the beauty of Dai Rong and her humble posture. He looked at her and said, "The love of the princess, Zhen appreciates, but Zhen is only in love with the empress and has no intentions of taking another into the Hogong. This one doesn't beg to be able to receive the emperor's favor, but only to be able to serve emperor." Dai Rong's eyes brimmed with tears as she looked at He Heng. "Is that also not possible? There are countless women in the world in love with Zhen, so does Zhen have to take pity and take them into the Hogong?" He Heng's voice became forceful. "If Zhen did so, it is not beneficial to oneself nor the person Zhen is in love with. Zhen appreciates the intentions of the princess, but asks princess not to mention this matter again in the future." If the words were spoken more clearly, it would be, "There's many women that like me in the world, but do I have to take all of them into the palace? Isn't that disgusting myself?" Dai Rong didn't think that when she had said those words, the emperor would so ruthlessly reject her. He even compared her to other vulgar women, as though she wasn't different from other women. She almost didn't dare to look at the faces of the other foreign of the envoys. Because even without looking, she knew that they were laughing at her inside. Because the husbands of these women lost their focus after seeing her, and fawned over her. So these women were jealous of her, and hated her. Emperor, the Crown Prince of Jing asks for an audience, His Highness Qing Wang asks for an audience. Qian Chang Xan seemed to have not seen this farce and with a peaceful expression walked over, disregarding Dai Rong on the way who was still kneeling on the ground. The Crown Prince of Jing. He glanced at Dai Rong. With a dark face, he responded, let the Crown Prince of Jing return. Tell him if the country of Jing still wants Delong to continue to support them, then to show sincerity. Jin doesn't lack for women, and even more, isn't interested in the women of Jing. Also, tell Sid to wait in the imperial study for Jin. Jin will be there shortly. Those words were like a heavy slap to Dai Rong's face. She didn't dare to think when the words reached the country of Jing, how the citizens would think of her. And didn't dare to imagine if the country of Jing was neglected by Delong due to her, how bad the situation would be. If that's the case, then Ming He, continue leading these honored guests through the garden. Ben Gong should be returning to the palace, Chu Qingju smiled as she stood, telling He Hing, since Emperor has other matters, then go early. Xia will wait for you to return to eat. All right, Jin will be quick. He Hing lowered his head slightly at the envoy's foreign before leaving with a procession of attendants behind him. From beginning to end, he didn't look again at Dai Rong. Chu Qingju walked in front of Dai Rong, smiling as she said, Princess, please stand. The Emperor is always like this, hope the princess doesn't mind. This one doesn't dare. Dai Rong felt that even her bones were cold. She trembled with fear as she bowed to Chu Qingju, respectfully sending off Empress. Chu Qingju nodded and took Mu Jin's hands as she turned and walked away. The foreign of the envoys watched as the Emperor and Empress left, then scornfully looked at Dai Ron. One of the foreign shook her head, remarking, such a pity. A few others followed in laughing. The sound of laughter passed into Dai Rong's ears, piercing and nasty, but she was helpless. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.